I get a mic. Good evening. Please stand for the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing after the pledge. This is the last Board of Education meeting for the 2019 calendar year. Over the last 12 months, our school system has lost a number of students and staff near and dear to our hearts. I ask you to join me now in a moment of silence in their memory. After the pledge.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't know why we remain standing. Okay. Good evening, and welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on AACPS TV and live streamed on the internet. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room, so please make sure you read those if you have not already. Before we begin our evening, I would like to recognize several special guests that we have with us for a couple items on our agenda tonight, speaking of the budget. We have County Executive Stuart Pittman. Thank you so very much, sir. Council Chairwoman Allison Pickard. Council Vice Chairwoman Sarah Lacey. Councilwoman Amanda Fiedler. Councilwoman Relisa Rodvian. And Chief of Staff for County Executive Pittman, Jennifer Purcell. Agenda item number 2.03 is the approval of minutes.
Second.
Any comments or suggestions of edit? Hearing none, consensus to approve minutes. Okay, seeing consensus. Next is the establish of the agenda order. Would any member like to make any changes? Hearing none, the agenda order is established as is. No recognitions this evening. Item 2.06, school community highlights. Okay. Nope, sorry. Yes. Ms. Schallheim?
I haven't been able to go to as many events as I normally would, given my shoulder situation, but I was able to go to a summit about the blueprint for Maryland that was hosted by several members of the Anne Arundel County delegation. I found it to be very informative, and that all they want and all they hope that we want is full funding for education, and so I just hope that everyone keeps that in mind with other things on this agenda and be in support of that. I also, as a little personal sidebar, just wanted to wish my daughter a happy 9th birthday. I wish I could be with her tonight, and Mommy loves you.
Ms. Hummer?
Yes, last week one of my favorite events of the year took place. It was the Baltimore Symphony side-by-side concert with our students. Mr. Gilliland and I attended, along with many of the senior staff, and it was 36 of our finest student musicians who played. It was an absolutely amazing concert, and a special recognition for Lydia Dowdy from Arundel High School, who played the French horn and was the solo performer, and she was amazing. And so we are very appreciative to the Baltimore Symphony for that amazing opportunity. And I know others will mention as well, many of us were able to go to see the donation of, we now have an airplane, and we'll be using it to jet out to Shady Side. I'm just kidding, we are not. But Northrop Grumman has donated an airplane to the school systems for the airplane aviation maintenance technician program that's coming in place. And so it was an incredibly exciting partnership with Northrop Grumman and the other groups that are working with us to bring that program in place. So I want to give a special shout out to Dr. McMahon and her staff for all the work they're doing to bring this amazing new technical program to our schools. And just to be clear, the plane does not fly, so nobody will be using it to commute anywhere, and the students cannot take it and go anywhere in it. So.
Thank you, Ms. Hammer. Ms. Alvey?
Last Wednesday, I had the opportunity of going to Germantown Elementary School and reading to their kindergartners about holiday traditions that I celebrate. So I just wanted to give a shout out to their principal for giving me the opportunity to come and visit, and it was a lovely experience. And thank you to all the students that were so welcoming and so kind and allowed me to even take part in their playtime and play kitchen with them. So thank you so much to all of them, and I look forward to doing other school visits in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Alvey. Ms. Ellis?
Some of us had the privilege to attend the government summit, Why Local Government, at South River High School. This was a fantastic event. I was so honored to take part in. It was really great to see kids learning about local government. We went into breakout sessions, and I was able to facilitate a group of students talking about what services are offered by local government, and then they identified where there's still needs. And I really saw some excitement among the students about getting involved and knowing they have a voice.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. And finally, Ms. Antwine.
Thank you, Madam President. I was going to be quiet in consideration of the big presentation tonight, but you opened the door, Ms. Hammer, when you talked about the side-by-side concert, because the Saturday after that, many of those same students were part of the all-county orchestra, and they did a fabulous job. So I want to recognize them for the hard work that they put in at both times. And I do also want to share that those students, when they get together, they have all of maybe 2 days, I think, to come together and be in harmony as they do these events. So I commend them for their hard work. I also had the privilege, and I really appreciate that Northeast High opened their doors to me to attend their GCC class. It was really fun, at least for me. I don't know about for them, but the students were, I appreciated that that the students were able to express themselves in a positive way, and at the end of the day, introduce good solutions. Finally, I thank Jessup Elementary for allowing me to come by and read to them. They actually corrected some of my words, but the first and second graders at Jessup Elementary, they were incredible, and I'm looking forward to reading to our next schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Antwine. Item number 207, Policy Committee Update. Mr. Lott.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, Policy Committee met today. We reviewed policy that's going to be coming forward next month having to do with the agenda setting. Agenda setting. And then also we're beginning to plan out a review of the Citizens Advisory Committee policy. So that's where we're at, and that's where we're moving. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item number 2.08, Budget Committee Update. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. We met this afternoon here in the boardroom, and we discussed the calendar going forward from here for the Budget Committee. And we also, so we did make some updates on that we'll be putting out. And then we also talked about looking at current policies that affect the Budget Committee and looking at whether we need to update any policies or create an actual policy specific to the Budget Committee. So we're exploring that at this time. And we will meet again, what's today?
On
January
22nd.
22nd, January 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Item 2.09, the CRASC report.
Good evening, President Corkadell, Vice President Ellis, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. Congratulations to our new president and vice president. Hello, my name is Preeti Cherry, and I'm the CRASC Secretary of Education. On December 5th, 6 members of the CRASC executive team completed the Community Building Circles training with Ms. Megan Lewis and Ms. Kathy Rockefeller. This allows CRASC to lead community building circles during the upcoming General Assemblies, and we are thankful to have had this opportunity. CRASC held our second General Assembly in partnership with our SMOB, Rita Alvi, last Thursday, CRASC Goes Global at Annapolis High School. We welcomed approximately 150 students from 13 high schools across the county. Our officers led sessions discussing cultural diversity, comparing equity versus equality, exploring the new Global Community Citizenship course led by the CRASC 9th grade team, and finally discussing the impact of implicit bias. In addition, we were excited to have Mr. Brian Burns and the Diversity Week Planning Committee from Glen Burnie High School highlight how they are embracing diversity and building relationships between students, faculty, and community. A special thank you to Dr. Maisha Gillens for sharing the mission of the Office of Equity and Accelerated Student Achievement Office and Annapolis High School for hosting. We had an outstanding day embracing our similarities and celebrating our differences. Our legislative team is busy reaching out to Maryland delegates and senators to schedule a time for them to attend CRASC's Lobbying Day on March 11th. Speaking of legislation, we are very proud of Amelie Holloman, Secretary of Legislation, from Broadneck High School for being chosen as one of the 2 Maryland delegates to participate in the United States Senate Youth Program from March 7th through 14th. This is an amazing opportunity, and we know that she'll represent AACPS well. Finally, on January 4th, the Maryland Association of Student Councils will conduct interviews to select the 5 finalists for the Maryland Student Member of the State Board of Education. We are excited that Connor Coran was selected as the regional president and Ms. Stacy Pellegrin was selected as regional advisor to take part in the 6-member interview panel. CRASC will be attending the Mask legislative session on February 8th, and at that time, students will elect the new Maryland Student Member of the State Board of Education. I appreciate the time to give you an update about what's happening in CRASC. Have a wonderful winter break and happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, and happy holidays to you and all the members of CRASC. The next item on our agenda is the presentation of the superintendent's recommended fiscal year 2021 operating and capital budgets. As a reminder to my fellow board members and those in attendance tonight, the board will conduct public hearings on January 7th at Old Mill High School and January 9th in this room, as well as a public workshop on January the 24th in this room. The hearings will offer 2 chances for the public to comment, and the workshop will offer the board the chance to ask their questions about the specifics of Dr. Arlotto's recommendation. Tonight is reserved for our superintendent to present that recommendation, so Dr. Arlotto, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, President Corkadell, Vice President Ellis, members of the board, city, county, and state elected officials, and residents of Anne Arundel County. When I think about the obligation that we, as a school system, have to the nearly 85,000 students we serve every day, 3 words come to mind: opportunity, intentionality, and impact. It is only through the creation of opportunities carried out with intentionality that we can have the positive impacts on children that they deserve and that our parents and community expect. Without these three ingredients, we simply cannot do our part to help mold and shape young minds and bodies into the excelling leaders not just of tomorrow, but of today. Without these three ingredients, we are left only with hope. And ladies and gentlemen, while hope is absolutely essential in every endeavor, hope alone is not a strategy. Much of the focus and discussion about our school system rightly surrounds the opportunities we create directly for our children, but we must recognize that a vast number of opportunities created outside of our classrooms lay the foundation for those created inside of them. We saw a shining example of this last week with the first of its kind donation, a 1972 Saberliner aircraft by Northrop Grumman that was retired from its fleet last year. Instead of scrapping it, the company opted to make an enormous investment in our children. The twin-engine jet, which will be housed at Tipton Airport in Fort Meade, will allow our students interested in aircraft maintenance careers to get the hands-on experience in our new aviation maintenance technician program that they would never get through textbook lessons or simulations. We will be training the future airline maintenance specialist workforce right here in our school system and in our county. While many of the opportunities we create come through material means, others are philosophical and driven by the passion and purpose our amazing employees have to create better worlds for our children. You can see it in our Office of Equity and Accelerated Student Achievement and in our equity leads at every school whose tireless dedication to developing strategies to ensure equitable approaches both inside and outside of our classrooms was recognized this year with an award from the National School Boards Association. This is the second straight year that we have been honored with this national award for our work around equity. And we are very proud to be the only school system in the nation with more than 20,000 students to earn it in each of the last 2 years. You could see it in people like Teresa Beilstein, a third grade teacher at South Shore Elementary School who is Maryland's 2019-2020 Teacher of the Year. Spend just a few seconds in Ms. Beilstein's class and you will get a clear glimpse of the boundless love her students have for her. That's because in addition to her phenomenal instructional abilities, she goes the extra mile to build relationships with every single child. Knowing them helps her create opportunities. Outside of the classroom, she coordinates the school science fair and dance team. Through all of that and more, she builds a lasting trust with her students who know she is in their corner and will do anything to help them succeed. You can see it in people like Larry Fisher, who culminated a 43-year career with our school system when he retired as chief custodian at Cape St. Clair Elementary School at the end of November. Mr. Fisher spent the last 30 years of his career at the school forging bonds with generations of families whose children have been educated there. He was far more than a man responsible for keeping the building running. He became a friend to students and staff alike, sharing as much with them as they shared with him. Those bonds afforded him the opportunity to better the lives of countless children in countless ways over the course of 4 decades. You can see it in people like Tammy Littleton, the Education Support Professional of the Year. Tammy's official title at Northeast High School may be Student Advocate, but she truly takes on multiple roles, from parent to advisor to mentor and friend. In everything she does, she aims to create better opportunities for students. And you can see it in people like Isabel Mendez, a world and classical language teacher in her first year at MacArthur Middle School. Ms. Mendez epitomizes passion and perseverance. A teacher in her native El Salvador, she relocated to the United States for family reasons in 2016. Not speaking English, she became frustrated that she could not continue teaching and took another job to support herself and her family. She also took English classes, though, because her dream of returning to teaching never dimmed, and colleagues at her job encouraged and supported her. I had the pleasure of meeting Ms. Mendez at New Teacher Orientation in August, and I will never forget the words she said to me with incredible pride in her eyes. "I'm going to teach in the classroom that I used to clean." That first job she took, custodian at MacArthur Middle School. Those colleagues who supported her, she now teaches beside them. Isabel Mendez seized her opportunities to be able to inspire and impact children in a different way. She knew her passion, and the best place for her to impact children was in the classroom, and she did everything it took to get there. That is exactly what we want our students to do as well. While there's much we can and must do inside the walls of our schools, some of the opportunities we create must be intertwined with those outside of our school system. We are one piece of a larger puzzle, especially when it comes to social issues. I take very seriously our responsibility to do everything we can to eradicate hate and bias from our society. As I've said before, we do not bear this burden alone, and we cannot fix this problem alone. We all must do our part, and collectively it starts with an honest assessment of where we are. For me, it's this. Our county has a problem with biased and hateful mindsets and actions. We cannot tolerate hate and bigotry at any time, in any place, and we all need to do something about it. We could spend hours, days, and months debating this issue, but such debate often does nothing to move us forward. No matter our calling or occupation, we must all admit that we all have opportunities to help our children unlearn the biases that have been imparted to them since birth. That is why I was so grateful that our Board of Education last year unanimously approved making our Global Community Citizenship course a graduation requirement beginning with this year's 9th graders. While there was some opposition to this effort, I am proud that our board strongly agreed that we must seize this opportunity to find ways to help our students engage in civil discourse and broaden their awareness of the vast, multicultural communities in which they live. This year, more than 6,000 students will take this course. There is merit to the notion that we must engage our students in this process at earlier ages. Changes in our middle school advisory lessons and the implementation of Second Step, which focuses on social emotional coping skills at the elementary level, are among the actions that we are taking to do just that. But let's be clear, there is much, much more work for all of us to do, and that work must include the homes across our county. We also continue to fight a battle against a rapidly rising number of social and emotional issues encountered by young people in our county every day. Last year, the county provided funding in our budget for 35 positions, including 18 new school counselors and 8 new school psychologists to help address this issue. I am requesting additional positions in this budget because this is a monstrous battle that is preventing many of our children from taking full advantage of the academic and extracurricular opportunities we provide them every day. Our board also created a mental health task force to examine key contributing factors and develop recommendations as to ways to best attack this issue. And I am proud that the county government and others have so readily joined forces with us on this front. Inside the classroom, we continue to attack achievement gaps wherever they exist. We do so in a variety of ways, but increasing opportunities for all of our students is paramount to that effort. After all, the achievement gap in many ways is a result of historical opportunity gaps. The county has also partnered with us on the task force to eliminate the achievement gap, and I am hopeful that bringing more resources to bear will accelerate the pace at which we are impacting this issue. We've had an impact that has resulted in continued success and it should not be ignored. Our overall graduation rate, for example, has risen by 5.5 percentage points to 89.2% since 2011. Over that same time period, the graduation rate gap between African American and white students has closed by 2.6 percentage points. The latest Maryland Report Card ratings, released by the state earlier this month, offer more proof of our impact. 20 of our schools gained 2 stars on the 5-star scale, and another 53 moved up 1 star compared to last year's ratings. Overall, 95% of our schools earned 3, 4, or 5 stars, with 23 reaching the 5-star mark. When it comes to 5-star schools, we have a higher percentage than any of the 5 largest systems in Maryland. We're now offering the PSAT and SAT free of charge to all of our high school juniors, providing a powerful tool to help open doors to post-secondary educational opportunities that may otherwise have remained closed. Last year, more than 4,900 juniors took the SAT for free in our classrooms, and we expect another 5,000 to do the same this year. More than 10,000 students are being educated in our cutting-edge magnet programs at the high school and middle school levels, and another 2,500 are involved in our innovative, community-specific signature programs at our 12 comprehensive high schools. And thanks to a federal grant funding secured through the hard work of our Division of Advanced Studies and Programs, we're expanding opportunities for robotics clubs at all of our high schools. The opportunities for students pursuing career and trade schools after leaving us also continue to expand. Today, more than 1,800 students are enrolled in programs at our 2 exemplary centers of applied technology, a 12% increase over 3 years ago. Our career technology education program continues to be recognized as among the best in the state, with students earning nearly 1,400 industry certifications last year alone. Thousands of students continue to take advantage of opportunities we offer through the AVID program, which exists in 44 schools, including all of our high schools and middle schools, to help students in the academic middle become more prepared for post-secondary education, be it at 2-year or 4-year college or career-oriented trade school. We've had more than 11,000 students currently participating in the program, and 13% of all secondary students are benefiting from the AVID elective course. We also continue to infuse AVID strategies on a school-wide level, further preparing students outside of the specific AVID course for college and careers. At the elementary level, 8 of our 12 clusters now have the EEE program, which provides an additional avenue of instruction designed to allow students to explore areas and topics such as arts and humanities, STEM and society, global studies, and world culture and language. The aim is to spark inquiry and creativity, helping students to broaden their horizons and perhaps career ambitions at a young age. We're also creating more of the right kinds of opportunities for our youngest learners. Last year, we converted 6 more schools with half-day pre-kindergarten programs to full-day programs, creating environments that allow students, especially those in the gaps, to become more acclimated to and successful in full-day school settings before they reach kindergarten. Nearly 1,100 students are enrolled in full-day pre-kindergarten programs at 25 schools this year. A year ago, County Executive Pittman and the County Council, along with the state, provided an incredible amount of funding to allow us to create and enhance opportunities like the ones I have just described. We received 99% of the board's total operating budget request and used it not only on students in our classrooms, but on adults. We were able to provide compensation enhancements for all employees that included 2 backstep increases for those who are eligible, putting a dent in the problem of catching our teachers and other employees up on wages lost during the recession. I say again now what I said last spring. We are making prudent and efficient use of the resources that we've been provided, and I'm confident that we will continue to see positive results. Our needs continue to grow, as do the number of students we serve. We are educating about 1,700 more students in our classrooms now than a year ago, the biggest year-to-year increase in about 30 years. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a testament to the opportunities that we are intentionally creating and the impact that we are having on the lives of young people. It is also a clear call, as we have said before, that making a dent in a single year will not get us to where we need to go. The $1.36 billion operating budget I am recommending to you this evening does not contain everything we need to address every issue. While I understand the desire of many to do just that in a single year, we must realize that there are many other compelling needs across our county. This budget recommendation represents $84.7 million increase from our current funding level, with $34.4 million of that dedicated to compensation enhancements for our incredible employees. While negotiations with employee bargaining units must still be completed, that amount is sufficient to provide the equivalent of a step increase for all eligible employees, a 2% cost of living increase for all employees, and a backstep for all eligible employees who are in an eligible bargaining unit or position in the 2011-2012 school year. We must continue to make inroads on this vital issue. The teacher shortage in Maryland and across the nation is real, and we must continue to do what we can to recruit and retain not just our exceptional teachers, but all of the exceptional employees across our system. More than 91% of the new positions I am recommending in this budget are for people who have daily contact with our children. 57 positions are allocated to the first phase of staffing for the new Crofton High School, the first high school we've added in our county in almost 40 years. The school opened for freshmen and sophomores in September, and we will round out the staffing there as the school grows by a class in each of the next 2 years. The enrollment growth I spoke of earlier means that we simply continue to need more classroom staffing. I am recommending adding 195 classroom teachers in this budget to address ongoing enrollment increases and to help reduce class size. Additionally, this budget contains funding for 20 teaching assistants and permanent substitute positions, 11.2 cultural arts teaching positions, 2 elementary language arts teachers, and 2 internship teachers to continue to facilitate key practical experiences for our high school students. This year, we expect more than 2,000 high school students to take part in valuable internships, with a goal over the next few years of getting every student to have an internship experience before graduation. Also included in the staffing request are 18 assistant principals as part of our ongoing plan to put assistant principals at all elementary schools, and 6.5 school-based secretaries. The last time we added positions to our complement of school-based secretaries was in 2009, and we've added 11,000 students since that time. To help address the needs of our growing number of English learners and their families, this budget contains funding for 10 English language acquisition teachers and 5 bilingual teaching assistants, as well as 2 additional bilingual facilitators. We added 25 ELA teachers and 10 bilingual teaching assistants a year ago, but our needs continue to rise. We now have more than 6,000 English learners, a 13% increase since 2018, and our ELA teachers have caseloads of approximately 48 students each. We simply must do better. We've also seen significant growth in the number of students with special and alternative education needs, and this budget adds 73.2 new positions to help address those needs. That number includes 32.8 positions in our comprehensive schools and 19.4 more positions in our specialty sites. It also includes 6.5 positions to facilitate accommodations in accordance with student Section 504 plans, and another 6.6 positions to open a therapeutic elementary school program that will allow us to better address the growing number of young students who are exhibiting challenging behaviors that can best be addressed in a more diagnostic setting. It also includes 8 additional bus aides to assist children to and from school. As I said earlier, meeting the social and emotional needs of our students is an area that must be addressed on a societal level, but we must recognize our ongoing responsibility to do what we can. In that regard, this recommendation contains $1.4 million for 14 new positions that include 9 additional school counselors, 2 additional school psychologists, and an additional social worker. In addition to what we can to keep pace with the needs of our students, we must continue to enhance the opportunities for them to access new and innovative curriculum. When we launched the EEE program at the elementary level in 2014, our plan was to add 3 clusters a year over 4 years. Funding has not allowed for that pace, but now is the time to complete the job. This budget contains $4.3 million for 42.4 positions to implement EEE and our 4 remaining clusters: Arundel, Old Mill, Severna Park, and South River, as well as at Richard Henry Lee and Oakwood Elementaries, which could not launch the program this year due to construction-related constraints. The program has not only been a huge plus for our young learners, but it also allows for critical additional planning time for elementary teachers. As I said earlier, we're continuing to convert pre-kindergarten programs from half-day to full-day where we can in order to better prepare our 4-year-olds for kindergarten. The 7 pre-kindergarten teachers and 7 teaching assistants in my recommendation will allow us to convert 4 current half-day programs to full-day and add 3 new full-day programs to our offerings. 2 additional positions will allow us to add 20 more full-day students at the highly popular Carrie Weeden Early Education Center in South County. Full-day programs allow us to access state funding through the Kerwin Commission recommendations that would otherwise be unavailable. As you know, we've been working with a transportation consultant to examine and find ways to maximize efficiencies in the way we transport nearly 60,000 students to and from school every day. As we await the consultant's final report, I've included funding for 7 additional positions in our transportation division. 3 of those positions are routers, who are essential to accurately process and disseminate approximately 3,000 bus route changes made each summer, and another 3,000 made during the school year. 3 positions will be used to enhance communication with our drivers, schools, and families. The remaining position will serve to dispatch buses from the newly established bus yard near South River High School, which replaces leased space we have used in the past. Our transportation system has been one of the most efficient in the state, but as we have directed additional staffing elsewhere to meet increased needs, we have not enhanced our transportation workforce. With about 7,000 more students riding buses than 10 years ago, the creation of a 13th high school feeder system, and our full complement of magnet programs now in place, this is the time to bolster this area. As we add more square footage to our building inventory, this is also the time to add to our facilities team. This budget contains funding for 4 additional custodians and 2 additional preventative maintenance technicians, and I hope to continue to add more to that area of our team in future budgets. Our entire facilities team is, of course, vital to the opportunities we provide to students in educational settings across our county. As we have continued to improve these environments over the years, we have had the staunch support of the county and state when it comes to capital funding. The $214.9 million capital budget I am submitting tonight will require continued support from our partners. The capital budget is $49 million more than the current year and includes $139 million in design and/or construction funds for 7 projects that are currently underway. Edgewater Elementary, Tyler Heights, Richard Henry Lee, Quarterfield, Hillsmere, and Rippling Woods Elementary Schools, and Old Mill West High School. Also included in this recommendation is $9 million for full-day kindergarten and pre-kindergarten additions at Sunset and Van Bachlen Elementary Schools, and $11 million for classroom addition and cafeteria expansion at Arundel Middle School. Our student projections clearly show the need for another elementary school in the western portion of the county, and this budget contains $3 million for the design of that new school to be constructed on the west side of Route 3 in the vicinity of the Two Rivers community. It also contains $4 million for the feasibility study and design of the new Old Mill Middle School South to be built on the current Southgate Old Mill Park. This will be the second major step in the Old Mill project, which will eventually break down the current 3-school complex on Patriot Lane and provide 2 new high school buildings, 2 new middle school buildings, a new Rippling Woods and Quarterfield elementary schools, and a new Center of Applied Technology North. Thomas Edison once proclaimed that most people miss opportunity because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. Ladies and gentlemen, I am incredibly proud that in my 14 years with Anne Arundel County Public Schools and the last 6 as your superintendent, we have never, ever been afraid to do that hard work. Despite difficult times and adversities, we have forged ahead for a cadre of children whose number continues to grow each year. We've never been content to be stagnant, for to do so would rob our children of the opportunities they deserve. Instead, we've continued to create those opportunities and to support them with an intentionality that allows us to impact our children in ways to help them achieve their full potential. I stand here tonight challenging us to continue on that path, and I look forward to working collaboratively with all of you in the coming months to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arlotto, and a special extension of appreciation to the staff. I know that every department and every person has worked really hard to get us to this point in time, and I look forward to a spirited discussion as to how we proceed and move forward. But before we move on with our presentation, we're going to take a couple-minute recess to allow for the folks to transition in and out, and then we will continue to proceed with public comment on this particular item. Want to thank everyone for their patience as we allowed some of our special guests to depart. So we're going to proceed now with public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during the public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers are allotted 3 minutes, and each may not allocate their time to others. A tone will sound when the time has expired. The board asks that the comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer sessions with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Handouts should be given to the board assistant for proper dissemination. And we're going to start the evening with those who signed up for agenda item .301, the budget presentation. So we have several seats up here. I will call your name. Jessica Hughes, Lisa Van Buskirk, Russell Leone, Elizabeth Ruddy, and George Cordova.
Said Jorge's not able, he's not able to be here.
Okay. Okay, then, sorry, I misread that. Holly Kleiderline. And I think there's a seat, Helen, if you would like to join us too. Ms. Wilkerson, thank you.
I guess I will start. All right. Good evening, President Corkadell, Vice President Ellis, Dr. Arlotto, and members of the board. My name is Russell Leone, and I'm an elementary school teacher and have proudly taught in Anne Arundel County students since 1998. I'm also the president of the Teachers Association, and I'm here before you on behalf of our over 6,200 members. So I continue to wear my I Love My Public School t-shirt because it's about people. It's about the teachers who provide challenging and engaging lessons for our students and safe spaces for them as well. It's about the children who come to school with enthusiasm for learning. It's about our custodians who have pride in their environment that they've created, and the office staff who greets everyone who comes in with a smile. We're all in this together. Last year, we started on a path to remind us all about the value that the people in our schools have. While we appreciate the work of last year, there's still much to accomplish. I'm hopeful that together we will partner to continue that work, that we will have real conversations and find ways to work together to add to the value that we have placed on our people. I've spent a good portion of time visiting schools and having conversations with teachers and other staff. People love their jobs, but they're overwhelmed. I see it in their eyes when they want to talk, but are looking over my shoulder instead at the clock because the bell's about to ring or they have papers to grade and lessons to plan. I've heard the frustration when they share how there just aren't enough hours in the day to do everything they need to do and to do it well. Added to this are the many stories about second jobs and seeing their own kids for a mere couple of hours a day, if that. And just recently, I spoke with one of our veteran teachers. Hired 15 years ago, they've been at the same school their entire career, but they struggle to make ends meet because their salary is 5 steps behind their loyalty to the county. They have stayed because their love for the people. But even that may not be enough, as they share that if healthcare costs continue to rise, they will need to look elsewhere. This teacher, with a crack in their voice, shared with me that they are at school at least 2 hours past the workday every day. I wish this story was unique, but there are over 3,500 Unit 1 employees who continue to be paid at rates below their years of experience. This is not the time to be conservative in the request for funding. Anne Arundel County is the 3rd wealthiest in the state of Maryland, but our investment doesn't always reflect that. So if you truly want to support our school system by creating a stable workforce, then we must take care of our long-term employees, and that starts with fair and competitive compensation. We know there is sufficient money in the county, and there's a will by the county council and the county executive to support the work we started. So in summary, we can work together to ensure that our employees are valued so that they will stay and make Anne Arundel County the best in the nation. We have the resources to adjust salaries to place each Unit 1 member on a scale matching their years of credited experience. We need you to make sure that stays in our 2020 2021 budget. Thank you.
Okay. Do I just start? Good evening. First, I'd like to start off by saying that I'm a mother of 3 girls, and 2 of which are already in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I grew up in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and I graduated from South River High School. And I decided when I graduated that I wanted to work towards bettering our future and become an educator. It's important for you guys to know this because I want you to know that I'm human, and I love my job, and I believe what I'm doing in my classroom. I believe in what I'm doing. This will be my 4th year as an educator in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and I can honestly say that I feel as if the classroom is where I should be. 50% of new teachers leave after their first 5 years of teaching. I do not want to be another statistic. Currently in our county, there are many open teaching positions and 300 positions currently held by uncertified teachers. What can we do with all of this information? Can we point fingers? Is it our students? Is it the parents? Is it the teachers? Or is it the increasing workload that seems to be endless, or that we feel our time as professionals is not being respected? We are one of the wealthiest counties in Maryland, so there's no reason we cannot compete with the salaries of other surrounding counties. Paying teachers what they deserve is how we keep valued educators in our system. The lack of support from our Board of Education, the lack of respect for our time as educators to better our classrooms is leaving many teachers feeling defeated. I'm a mother and a teacher, and there's work every night to be brought home. I feel as if I'm struggling to be a great mother and a great teacher because of the unrealistic expectations placed on classroom teachers. Learning a new curriculum, planning for math, explicit comprehension, 3 guided reading groups, writing, and science or social studies is 3 planning sessions each day. We are taking time to complete Fontes and Pinnell assessments, 2 SLOs, grading, emails, copies, and the list can just keep going on. All of this takes away from the ability to use our planning time for what's needed most, to plan effective lessons that support student success. If we continue to overcrowd our classrooms and place more demands on teachers, our test scores will not improve, our teacher shortage will not improve, and the social and emotional health of our students will not improve. I have spent countless hours working on my bachelor's degree in elementary education, furthered my career to become certified in special education, and I'm working towards my master's in instructional technology. I'm also taking professional development courses. All of this is to say I am a professional and I am devoted. I am devoted to my students, to my career, and to myself. We all are. And we ask that you, our board members, listen to us, hear our concerns, do good, and make change for us so that we don't leave what we love most, teaching.
Good evening, Dr. Arlotto and members of the board. My name is Elizabeth Ruddy, and I am a 5th grade teacher at Crofton Meadows. This is my 17th year teaching, my 12th in Anne Arundel County, and I'm here to tell you that we have a serious crisis in our schools. Our teachers are stressed, overworked, and underpaid. As recognized in our mandatory equity training 2 weeks ago, your teachers are feeling overwhelmed. But this problem needs so much more than the deep breathing and mindfulness that was suggested. The stress of handling the academic and behavioral concerns of our students is not new. That's what we signed up for. That's why highly qualified teachers pursue their bachelor's and their master's degrees, take the praxis exams, and become certified in multiple areas, because we strive to be experts that are prepared for our students. It's the being overwhelmed and underpaid component that's making this crisis. Just imagine you were asked to give an hour-long presentation for your colleagues. I imagine you would spend a minimum of 2 hours planning. Teachers do 20-plus hours of presentations with 4 hours of planning during the week and countless hours spent at home planning and grading. That's the reality of teaching. I realize that many jobs are overwhelming and time-consuming, but validation for hard work in most jobs comes in the form of a salary that makes you feel valued and respected. The underpaid component of our stress has gone on for too long. It's inexcusable that our county is one of the richest counties in one of the richest states in one of the richest countries in the world, and we treat our teachers this way. Veteran teachers are paid $10,000 to $15,000 a year less than some neighboring counties. It's crazy that highly educated professionals must work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. That is why we struggle each year to retain and attract highly qualified teachers. How does this impact our students? When teachers are struggling to make ends meet, when teachers feel undervalued and underappreciated, the impact trickles into our abilities to do a job that takes an immense amount of time, energy, and planning. When I started teaching 17 years ago, I went in knowing I would fight for my students to ensure that they had what they needed. I never dreamed I would be fighting for the rights of highly qualified and highly educated teachers. Solve this crisis. Make this a priority. Make me come back here next year to discuss curriculum, infrastructure, the need for emotional and behavior supports for my students. The students are why we all chose this job, but they are not enough to temper the stress and defeat we feel when we are overwhelmed and underpaid. When you consider next year's budget, you must consider how one of the richest counties in one of the richest states and one of the richest countries in the world can solve this crisis. Thank you, and good night.
Good evening, Board of Education and Superintendent Arlotto. This is Lisa Van Buskirk of Start School Later, Anne Arundel County. Given all the programs that Dr. Arlotto has proposed in his budget, you may be asking, how can we possibly afford asking for more money to implement healthy, safe, and age-appropriate school hours for all students? Can we afford additional improvements to our transportation system above and beyond what Dr. Arlotto has just proposed? These are the wrong questions, I say. You should be asking, what are the costs of maintaining the status quo? Or how can we afford not to change? Can we afford to continue to have school buses arrive at high schools 30, even 45 minutes before the bell, but not permit students to enter the school until 15 minutes before classes begin? Can we afford to continue to have school buses run habitually late to pick up elementary and middle school students? Can we afford to continue the poor communications from the Transportation Department regarding locations of buses when many questions could be resolved through GPS-based technology and smartphone apps? Can we afford to continue to have only 21% of our high school students achieve 8 hours of sleep when they need closer to 9 or 10? Can we afford to continue to contribute to the increased mental health problems, including increased rates of depression, suicide ideation, suicidal attempts, and substance abuse experienced by our sleep-deprived students? Can we afford to continue to contribute to chronic health issues as a result of chronic sleep deprivation by our adolescents? Can we afford to continue to have chronic absentee rates and graduation rates lower than those that could be achieved, with those at the lower end of the achievement gap suffering the most? Can we afford to have students literally falling asleep in class? Can we afford to have children waiting in the dark for buses? Can we afford to continue to have late starting and releasing elementary schools, knowing these children will be better served by earlier start times? Can we afford to continue ignoring the pleas from April 2017 by Mead Heights principal, staff, and parents pleading for relief from late start and release times? Can we afford to continue ignoring the pleas from Folger McKinsey this fall for relief from their late start and release times? Can we afford to continue to ignore the recommendations of nearly every public health organization, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Medical Association, U.S. Centers for Disease Control, and Maryland's MedChi Society? Can we afford to continue ignoring the recommendations of Maryland Department of Juvenile Services, the Maryland Department of Health, the Maryland State Department of Education, the Maryland General Assembly, the National Parent Teachers Association, the National Education Association, AACPS's own 2014 Start Time Task Force, the 4,500 signatures of petitions from Start School Later collected, and over 20 years of discussion on this in this county on start times? When economists from the Hamilton Project estimated a minimum of 9-to-1 benefit to cost ratio, and the RAND Corporation estimated a return of investment from later school start times from fewer drowsy driving deaths and increased graduation rates in as little as 2 years, how can we afford not to act? The answer should be no. We cannot afford to continue the status quo. Please let fiscal year 2021 be the budget that asks for adequate funding to ensure safe, healthy, and age-appropriate school hours for all of Anne Arundel County students. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Arlotto, President Corkadell, Vice President Ellis, and board members. My name is Holly Kleiderline, and I am the school counselor for 718 students at Oak Hill Elementary. Last year, this board made tremendous strides to add many additional school counseling positions in the budget. The fact that I am not the only counselor with a caseload over 700 indicates there is still a long way to go. I urge you to continue to add positions. Here's why. When one parent out of about 1,200, wants to know if their 5th grade trombonist can take band, AVID, and a foreign language next year, they contact the school counselor. When a homeschooled student has difficulty transitioning to a public school, they talk to the school counselor. When a military parent is deployed or returning stateside and they want support for their child, they contact the school counselor. When a prospective parent wants a tour of the school that now has 5 stars, they schedule it with the school counselor. When one of 80 staff members sees a student struggling to keep their hands to themselves, or notices a student is hungry, or misses every Friday, or is teased about their religion, or the street they live on, they talk to the school counselor. When a student asks to see me because their friend is talking about hurting themselves, everything else stops. There seems to be a perception that working within an elementary school is somehow less than, or easier, or less serious than other levels. I think that unintended bias makes it difficult for elementary level counselors and other educators to advocate for proactive measures when it comes to mental wellness and a comprehensive multi-tiered program. But we know that prevention and early intervention works. We also know it's cost effective. I've been told yet again this year that I need to be creative about using my resources. That hurts. If I had the resources, and if my colleagues had the resources, I wouldn't need to keep coming here to testify. Thank you.
Hello, President Crocodile, Ellis, Vice President, and board members. I'm Helen Wilkerson, President of Secretary's Assistants Association of Anne Arundel County Public School. I have been in the school system for that many years. I started out as a one-on-one assistant with a student that was very troubled, that had been raped, and was pregnant. And from there, I became a TA, and then I furthered my time in the school system as a professional, provisional teacher. And then from there, I'm back here where I am in the technology support technician field. So I have seen many lights and had an opportunity to touch many fields here in Anne Arundel County Public School. Today, I do support what you have presented to us this afternoon, Dr. Olato and the board. I think it is a great thing, and glad to see that you all are still moving forward with the salaries. I do have one little quick concern over the salaries. Glad to see first that you're adding more secretaries, because we definitely need that. It was just a subject we brought up at in our LMC the other day. We need more secretaries in our school. It's good to see that you're also adding positions for teachers' assistants. However, last year budget, you presented to us to have the 2 steps taken. A lot of people were very happy, but you had people that was at the top of the scale that worked during the 08, 09, 07, 10 school year that did not receive that, because you limit them to, if you're at the top of the scale. They felt unappreciative. After many years of being in the system, and you work that hard and that long, you feel that I am only getting 2%. I was here, I have taken a loss in pay as well. We hope that the step that you are, not just the step, I'm sorry, the back pay that you are planning to provide us, that we will be allowed to negotiate according to what it is best for our Unit 4 members. So I'm bringing this to your attention as you continue to make your plans, and we appreciate all that you are doing, and we hope that you continue to be more aggressive with fundings, because the money is here in the county. We thank you, and we hope that you will have a great and restful holiday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkerson, and please extend our holiday greetings to yours in kind. Thank you so very much. Okay, next is general public comment. So we have first up Josh Mazer, Dr. Amy Wolfson, Sophie Grigg, Linda Johnson, and Faith Grigg. as the first up, right? And I believe, looks like we have one more seat, Corinne Frank. Corinne? Oh, there she is. Oh, okay, so we'll hold back, then, Princess Merritt?
Hi, everyone, and happy holidays. Thank you all for your dedication to my family's education. We really feel like we get a great education in Arundel County, and thank you all very much. I'm Josh Mazer from Annapolis, Maryland. I'm here with some concern about some information I got. What I learned through some Public Information Act requests that I filed with the Maryland Department of Health is that State Senator Clarence Lamb and the Maryland Department of Health are currently engaged in systematic preparations to mandate Merck's HPV vaccine as a school entry requirement for all Maryland students. And they want to get this done in the next year or two. And like I said, I found this out through a Public Information Act request. I'm concerned about this, and I think it's a bad idea. The justification for this, in your second piece on Maryland Department of Health letterhead, signed by Dr. David Blythe, who's our state chief epidemiologist, Dr. David Blythe says, look at Australia for what a great job this shot is doing. So I looked at Australia. This shot was marketed to us as a preventive measure against cervical cancer. Australia, if you look at your graph, they had a 40-year decline in HPV-mediated cervical cancers that was engendered by the introduction of the pap smear and by education about risk factors, old-fashioned public health. When you get to this point, in the 06-07 timeframe, is when they introduced the HPV shot in Australia. And they went from 720 cases of invasive cervical cancer per year, and now they're up to over 950. A possible explanation for that increase is found in the licensing document that I provided to you called the VAERBAC. And the VAERBAC clearly shows that some cohorts of girls who take the HPV shot manufactured by Merck, the same shot that State Senator Lamb and our Maryland Department of Health are actively preparing to mandate in the state or taking away our education, there's a 44% greater likelihood of cervical lesions in large groups of girls who take this, and this is evident if you read the licensing documentation. Why is the program happening in Maryland? The same Public Information Act request that disclosed the information to me about the attempt to make it a mandate shows the Maryland State Department of Health has gotten on board with, this says, physician incentives, competition, wine, quality bonus structure, and here's a big green dollar sign. So when you're talking with your physician about whether your child should get the HPV shot, you have to wonder, are they getting a bottle of wine? Maybe you can ask your doctor, are we playing Glengarry, Glen Ross with shots now in Maryland? Does your doctor get a Rolex? Do they get a bottle of wine? Do they get fired if they don't get the shot? Please push back on HPV vaccine mandates in the state of Maryland. We don't need them. They're a bad idea. Thank you.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Arlotto. I'm Amy Wolfson. I'm a professor of psychology at Loyola University, Maryland, a member of the board of directors for the national organization Start School Later, which was founded here in Anne Arundel County. And I'm also one of the authors of the AAP, that is the American Academy of Pediatrics policy statement on delaying school start times. I'm also a longstanding researcher in the area of adolescent sleep. I'm here because I understand that your county is considering, with your transportation analysis that you talked about earlier, that you may decide to delay school start times for middle schools and high schools in Anne Arundel County. Obviously, I think that would be terrific, and in fact, you would be the first county in the state of Maryland, or the first school district in the state of Maryland to delay school start times for all middle school and high school students. So why would I say this? First of all, Teenagers report that they are getting less sleep than their younger peers or siblings. Yet we know that for children ages 10 to 17, they need 8.5 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Yet 2017 data shows that Maryland, 76% of Maryland high school students and 45% of Maryland middle school students are getting less than 8 hours of sleep per night. This is a perfect storm, a term that my colleagues and I have used, because we know that beginning in early adolescence, adolescents report a delayed phase preference, but more importantly, a delay in the biological timing of their sleep. With early school start times, this makes it just about impossible for any middle school or high school student to get the much needed close to 9 hours of sleep per night. In other words, they go to bed late and they have to get up early, and they develop short and misaligned or ill-timed sleep, which leads to very serious consequences. And I make note that I know you as a county are very concerned about the mental health of your students. It leads to excessive daytime sleepiness, learning and attention deficits, mood and behavior instability, substance use and abuse, suicidality and suicides, serious motor vehicle accidents, and serious health problems such as weight gain, risk for obesity, compromised immune system issues, and simply increased common cold and other health concerns. So I urge you to take this systematic approach and delay school start times for middle school students and high school students. I would recommend 8:30 or later. And I would argue that also this is a social justice concern, because we know that if you take a structural approach, more children benefit than not. And finally, please keep in mind that what happens is you get later wake times while bedtimes remain largely the same.
If you could please summarize
Thank
in a
you.
sentence or two. Done?
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. I believe, Ms. Antoine, did you want to hold till this round? Okay. Yes, absolutely. You may proceed. I believe the Griggs, yeah. Or do you? Okay. Princess?
Good evening, President Corkadell, Vice President Ellis, members of the board, and Dr. Arlato. My name is Princess Mare, and I'm a junior at Meade High School. I would like to speak on the topic that I'm sure has been touched on a lot in the past few months. As a student, the calendar heavily impacts my life. Let's start by saying I was excited when I was selected to sit on the 2020-2021 calendar committee, and even more amazed to be a part of all the people sitting and collaboratively working to create a calendar that we could not only agree upon but be happy with. In our proposed calendar, we agreed to start early, which not only was beneficial but necessary, as the amount of information lost, especially in math and English over the long summers, hinders learning for the next school year, which is especially damaging to students. Starting late hinders all students who are taking AP, IB, and standardized tests due to missing 3 weeks of instructional time, which could be used to recover lost information and prepare for these rigorous tests, while also starting school out on a good note without feeling rushed because our instructional time has been decreased by a month and the curriculum needs to be retaught as we've lost information. The next point I would like to address was a suggestion to move professional development days to Mondays, causing late arrivals, or Fridays, causing early dismissals. As a student, in my opinion, I think that's not a good idea. On Mondays, one that puts pressure on families with young children, and it not only disrupts arrival times, but teacher learning plans. Students and teachers would both be disoriented. Secondly, a 2-hour early dismissal on a Friday would serve as a long weekend, and kids would just not come to school. And as I've heard from a few teachers, these days, for these early dismissals on Fridays, teachers would call in subs and therefore miss a very important professional development day around equity, which I think isn't good. Lastly, I would like to discuss the issue of spring break, as one of the many students who uses it to study and replenish my mental state, as well as teachers, which is something we commonly neglect when we're talking about this. Students and teachers get burnt out. However, a 3-day Spring break does nothing to aid to this. In my opinion, it only makes it worse. As a student who gets burnt out, I can speak firsthand about how hard it is to fight to wake up to go to school and do my mountains of homework. How hard it is to sit in front of a laptop and type 4 3,000-word essays, and how I get into a slump that's only getting worse by each test that I take, which drain me, as I have no time to study, and there are more tests coming. In school, I'm getting mountains of homework, to the point as to where my grades start to drop because I have no motivation to continue. And the only word that describes my personality is sluggish. And teachers feel this 10 times more, as they're creating lesson plans for different subjects, grading our work, giving our tests, and trying to make sure that we're prepared for the upcoming standardized tests. Please consider our proposed calendar to aid to our harmonious education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Princess. Yes.
Hello, my name is Sophie Gregg, and I am an 8th grader at Southern Middle School. Recently, we were given the opportunity to go to the Center of Applied Technology South to see what options and classes are available to us next year as we move to high school. As 8th grade students participating in the Cat South field trip, we were surprised and upset by the gender-biased groups and the way they reinforce gender stereotypes in potential career choices. Beyond the issues with the field trip, we were also upset at the way the administrators had handled our complaints. The Cat South field trip took us to different options we could choose in high school for the Center of Applied Technology. The groups were divided by gender, and we were sent to stations stereotypically associated with their gender, such as girls going to cosmetology and nursing, while boys going to welding and HVAC. We suggested in an email to our guidance counselor to randomly select the groups in the future, or for the groups to be handled in a way that would allow every student a chance to participate in activities which might hold their interests. We appreciated his response to our complaints, in which he said that he would discuss this issue during the planning for next year's field trip and acknowledge the issue. However, another administrator denied and invalidated our complaint. I will now be followed by my classmate Linda Johnson.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Linda Johnson, and I am also an 8th grader at Southern Middle School. The trip to Cat South was helpful in giving us information and exposure to help in our decisions on applying to Cat South in the future. However, the reaction of our administrators to our complaints clouded over the trip and negatively impacted our experience. Just as we were not necessarily interested in cosmetology and nursing, there are likely male students who do have an interest in a career as a nurse or a hairstylist or a makeup artist. And not only were these options not available for them to preview, but a not so subtle message was sent by the way these trips were arranged that these are not appropriate career choices for a boy. The reaction of our administrators made it seem like our concerns did not matter, listening to them was not worth their time, and no changes would be made based on our concerns. This makes us think that speaking up does not make a difference, and we are less likely to do so in the future, knowing it is unlikely to yield results. We want to make sure this does not happen again for future students. Some ways that could easily fix this problem would be to either take the students' identification numbers and randomize them, organize groups alphabetically, or have the students form groups and have the groups sent to randomly selected stations not based on gender. This matter must be addressed so that it does not affect future students at Southern Middle School.
Sophie, if I could just jump in real quick. Sophie and Linda, thank you. Really well done. You present yourselves beautifully, and you're 100% correct. So would you do me a favor, when we have this last speaker in this round, would you meet with Dr. Lucarelli? She's our Associate Superintendent, and she'd like to sit down with you and talk about these issues. Would you do that? Outstanding. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Faith Craig. I'm Sophie's mom, and I'm the parent of 2 Southern Middle School students.
When we first heard the girls' concerns about the field trip, my husband and I were quite surprised that these types of policies based on outdated gender stereotypes were still in place. We reached out to the school to ensure that we had an accurate picture, expecting to hear that we were just not fully informed of what was going on. Instead, our daughter's characterization of the situation was quite accurate, and not only that, I was told that this is how it had always been done, as an adequate reason. While my initial issue was that this outdated gender-based approach to exposing students to vocational education was not good, that was quickly eclipsed by the poor response to the girls' complaints by the school's administration. It took 4 emails and adding the principal to the email to get the point across. I wasn't really providing feedback. It was a formal complaint of how this was being done. Instead of calling me to discuss the situation, the vice principal called my husband, at which point she asked if my daughter had a boyfriend, insinuating that the only reason she was upset at the gender-segregated groups for the field trip was because she would be separated from him for the day. The vice principal also assured my husband that each student, male or female, had equal chance to go to each subject on this trip. After this exchange and the girls expressed their concerns to their administrators, the principal met with them during one of their classes, belittling their concerns, and did an imitation of a boy whining about having to go to cosmetology as a justification for the current design of the trip, insinuating that the boys being happy was more important than listening to the concerns of the girls. I heard that the classroom teacher who witnessed this was horrified. From what we have heard from the girls, when this trip did happen, none of the boys went to cosmetology. This was easy to see as each student was wearing a sticker that listed each subject their group was scheduled to see. People we have shared this with are disgusted, including school administrators from other school systems. Some urge the girls to take this to social media, as is too often the solution these days. Instead, we offered the girls the chance to present their concerns of both the policy and their treatment to the Board of Education in hopes of getting a better response than they got from their school and their administrators. We constantly hear the refrain from the schools of teaching the students to stand up for what is right and to not just be a bystander. Yet when the girls stood up and said something in this case, they were quickly told to sit down and be quiet. As a parent, I have 3 requests. First, that for any activities or field trips, gender segregation must be pre-approved by the school system for a substantive reason, not just it's always been done that way. Second, for the administrators at Southern Middle and wherever else it is needed to receive training on how to not perpetuate gender stereotypes and to proactively take steps to remove gender bias from policies and activities. And finally, for training for the administrators at Southern Middle on how to deal with student complaints and concerns with dignity and respect, as would be expected of any professional. Our school failed the girls on this issue with their response. I hope the board will do better.
Thank you very much. I believe we have a couple of board comments before we close out this round of testimony. We have Ms. Schallheim, followed by Ms. Alvey. Did you want to, do you want to? Yes. Okay, because we were going to wait until, for closure. So, Ms. Antoine? Okay. I didn't know if it, because it looked like they wanted specific to this by itself.
Well,
sure.
I didn't hear them before this one, of course.
Gotcha.
I would like to,
Yeah.
if I could, I would like to address all of the testimonies. First of all, I appreciate each one of you, especially our students, for coming out tonight to share with us. This is very close to your holiday break, and so we know how important you coming out here tonight, even more than the subject matter, how important it is for you to be here tonight. We don't take that for granted. I had the question about the merge. I wanted to, you had documentation. Do you have that to share with the board, please?
You shared it, you emailed it to us.
They emailed it to us?
Yep.
Okay, then. So I did get the information. I guess it was emailed to us previously. My question was about the documentation that was sent. You sent it, so that answers that. Thank you. So then I move on to the calendar. I consider what you've shared, especially coming from the student view. And Ms. Merritt, I know how you get greatly involved, and the information you've shared, I've annotated, and I'll work with the board to see if we can make changes there. And then, young ladies, you guys are fire, for lack of a better term. You were beautiful in your presentation. You were beautiful in standing up for what you believe in, and to be so young right now, seeing that and recognizing the wrong. I did have a question though. Was the separation from at your school or was it at Cat South?
It was through our school that separated the groups that would later go on to Cat South. So it was through
So then, Dr. Otto, if we could please arrange for another field trip so that the students that missed out on what they probably wanted to check out would have that opportunity through this school. And so it's my understanding that this isn't something that happens at Cat South, but this was specific to Southern Middle. So I'm requesting.
We're going to follow up with the girls, so we're
right, but
we can learn more about what's occurring.
their schedules are coming up, their opportunities are coming up, so we want them to be able to have a full tour, not just a divided and biased tour. So if they could, after the break, as soon as possible, get the tour in again.
Thank you, Ms. Antwine. Ms. Schulheim?
Thanks to all of you for your testimony. I'm particularly impressed by you two. I never want you to stop advocating for yourself. You are your best advocate. Use your voice. Use it loudly and fight for what you believe in. I'm horrified to hear about your experience, and I just hope that this doesn't happen again to any other group of students visiting either of our CAT programs from any of our schools. Because if you want to be a welder, go and be a welder. If you want to do hair, go and do hair. It has nothing to do with your gender. You're capable of doing whatever you set your mind to and follow your dreams. So I just implore our system to have a really hard look at what we've heard tonight and to fix it. And this can't ever happen again. And I thank you for bringing it to our attention and for using your voices and for bringing them here. With regard to the Merck stuff, to the HPV shots, I'm a stage 3B cervical cancer survivor, so I take everything you say very seriously. Okay, I'm 5 years, 8 months out by the grace of God. And shouldn't you be lobbying your delegates and your senators or an MSDE? Because I don't think that we can unilaterally decide on what shots kids do and do not get before entering the school system.
Well, thank you for sharing that you're a cancer survivor, and this data should be particularly alarming to you because it shows that the young girls who take the shots, and this is the FDA package insert, the FDA documentation shows there's a 44.6% greater likelihood of developing cervical lesions in cohorts of girls who take this shot. And that's a fact. You can read it with your own eyes. I don't know how to approach it. I come to the school board because you're my community. And I want my friends and neighbors to know that State Senator Lamb, who's an MD himself, he wants to protect lives, I get it. But sometimes people don't take the time to read the stuff, and I do. My daughters are about these young ladies, my daughter is about these young ladies' age. I read the stuff before it goes in their body. And the idea that we're going to deprive kids of a free, fair, appropriate public education in Maryland because the State Department of Health and Clarence Lamb want to mandate this concerns me. And I'm not saying it's people are free to take the shot. Talk it over with your doctor. But if you read the documentation on the shot, it's very concerning. And I don't know where to go with it. Maybe someone will have an idea.
Okay, we do want to try to keep it to answer the specific question in the interest of time. Any other comments, Ms. Shawhan? Thank you very much. Ms. Alvey?
So thank you so much for coming and testifying. As a student advocate, I think that it is wonderful that you're taking this opportunity to talk about the things that matter to you. And I just wanted to particularly let you know that whatever you want to do, whatever you want to be, you have the opportunity to do that. And it is the school system's responsibility to provide those opportunities for you. And I know that our superintendent is doing his best work to make sure that happens. So I'm sorry that this happened, and I'm looking forward to hopefully hearing the changes that occur because you guys were such great advocates. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Alvey. Okay, we are going to take the next public testimony. We have 3 people here. We have Corinne Frank and her son Colin, and we have Emily Halloran.
Good evening, President Corkadell, Vice President Ellis, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Amelie Holloman, and I am a senior at Broadneck High School. In October, I was selected to be one of the 2 student voices on the calendar committee. As a whole, we passed a calendar with a start date of August 31st and a 6-day spring break. Tonight, I testify before you in support of this original calendar. I would like to share both the committee's and a student's perspective on the later start. The later start hinders students academically as they are faced with less time to learn the content before AP exams, less days off during the school year, and less benefit from the opportunities the school system provides us with, especially parent-teacher conferences. A large proponent of the calendar we developed is the 6-school-day spring break that would have lasted from March 29th to April 5th. As a student, I cannot stress the importance of this spring break enough. Tonight, I will break down several reasons why. First, I understand the concerns surrounding an elongated spring break so close to AP exams. However, as a student who will have completed 10 AP courses by the end of my high school career, the current 3-day spring break has made it far more difficult for my peers and I to focus on AP exams. During my junior year, I had to study for all 4 of these exams while balancing the course load of other honors courses, clubs, commitments, and a year-round sport. The expectations of being able to keep up with my work in all of these classes as well as prepare for the exams was near impossible. My experience and the experience of many students around me has been to postpone all other work and bear the burden of an increased work pile after exams. Which brings me to my second point. I have to disagree that a 3-day break is more than enough for students' mental health. In wake of recent events in the community and the rise of mental health concerns, I believe that it is only fair for the board to look at this issue from a perspective of mental wellness among students. Only having a few days off between the months of January and June has a negative impact on both students and teachers in the classroom. The transition from March to April is a stressful one for many high schoolers, especially juniors, who will be taking the SAT, many AP exams, and beginning the college process. Personally, I know that last year I would have benefited from an elongated spring break. My third and final point is that, due to the nature of family vacations, many students often miss the entire week of school, regardless of if there's a break or not. This results in lower attendance and, more importantly, a shared attitude by teachers of not assigning any work, since more than half their students are absent. In recent years, it has felt pointless to even attend school during this week, because, quite frankly, I don't end up doing any work in my classes. The calendar committee was comprised of representatives from many departments in AACPS, in addition to the AACC, PTA, and CAC. While I cannot speak for all students in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, nor all families, I believe that the initial calendar committee's recommendation of an earlier start would benefit students academically. Starting later and with minimal break puts our students at a disadvantage, heading into exams exhausted and stressed. I'm requesting that you reconsider and approve the calendar that was recommended by the calendar committee and the superintendent. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cullen, and I am a 3rd grader in Bodkin Elementary School, and I would like to ask you for more recess and lunch. I have ADHD, and it's hard for me to sit still. When I am outside and running, I don't get as many Yikes notes. My goal about Yikes notes is not to get any in a single year. I got pretty close before, and it was only 3 notes. My mom and I are working on this together. I also was picked for student government, and I'm sort of good at it. One thing that I want to work on is longer recess and lunch. My sister is also in Bodkin Elementary School and also has less recess and lunch. She's in kindergarten. I think that everybody wants more recess. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colin. That was so brave and greatly appreciated. Proud mom moment.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's my progeny.
Good evening, President Corkadell, Vice President Ellis, board members, and Dr. Arlotto. I wanted to start off by saying congratulations to the new president and vice president. It's very exciting for our county, and thank you, ladies, for taking on this tremendous role. And also, Mr. Gilliland, thank you so much for guiding our county through a very unique time for us, and we really do appreciate everything you've done. I would like to say that my name is Corinne Frank. I'm an AACPS parent, and this is one of my awesome little AACPS kids right here. I wanted to talk about, yeah, I know, he's not going to be able to sit still. I wanted to talk about some of the details of the Mountain Road traffic situation that we had last week. During rush hour, I think many of you know that the entire peninsula in Pasadena was locked down for hours due to one of the poles being hit the night before. Our Bodkin kids were home, some of them hours late. My daughter had the first bus to arrive at the school, and she was home after 6 p.m. in full dark. Every child who rode a bus that night was let off in darkness, and I know some parents who were also stuck coming home were not able to get to the bus stop to pick their children up in time. Several children wet themselves. Many were crying and scared, and all were tired and hungry. I understand that AACPS cannot control the traffic, cannot control BGE, and I know that BGE delaying the work really impacted that. But dismissing kids all the way down at the end of a dead-end road in rush hour when there are already major traffic delays does have a huge impact on the traffic, and it makes a terrible situation that much worse. Bodkin has almost 600 students, and that is a lot of buses to be put on the road when there's a gridlock. Our late start time dictates an excessively late dismissal time. This late dismissal time creates more traffic during rush hour, deprives our kids of valuable playtime, and creates dangerous conditions for drop-offs. Sunset today was at 4:45, and I picked up my children at 4:30, and they're only on the second stop. I know our teachers miss many opportunities for professional development because they cannot arrive to those courses on time. At the last board meeting, Dr. McMahon stressed that we were on a course purposefully built on 3 key foundational blocks: relationships, professional development, and a culture of equity. I know that the transportation audit will be coming up shortly, and I urge you to prioritize our later starting schools, which are becoming more numerous throughout the county. I want to thank everyone who contributed to the recess conversation. And I know that we are moving that forward, and I am very excited to see what the CAC recommends. And I just wanted to keep that conversation going as well. And I was lucky enough to have some help tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Ms. Shawhud?
I just wanted to have a quick comment. I couldn't agree with the 3 of you more. And thank you so much for your testimony. Amen to more recess and lunch, and I look forward to continuing that conversation with my colleagues. With regard to the calendar, I have to back the will of the board after a vote, but if I'm gonna, and I didn't have any fight in me that night. It was 6 days after I shattered my shoulder, but I do hope that my colleagues and are listening to what you said. For conversations about future calendars, because I agree that there needs to be a proper mental health break, and you can't just go through from January to mid-June with a long weekend. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Scholheim, and thank you to all who have testified. We're going to now move along to, we have consent items and awards of contract. Do we have a motion to bundle? Second? Okay. Discussion. Okay, it looks like we may have a question or two. Oh,
Recommendation.
my apologies here.
I'm
Really?
not going anywhere.
I know. Dr. Arlotto, may we please have your recommendation?
Absolutely. I recommend that the board approve the contracts as listed on today's agenda, 5.01 through 5.06.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I apologize, Dr. Arlotto. We will duly note the recommendation. We are currently, I believe, however, in discussion on a motion to bundle that has been seconded. Ms. Scholheim?
I would like to offer a friendly amendment and talk about item 5.05 outside of the bundling of the rest of the items.
Second.
Is my friendly amendment taken?
Okay.
I don't remember who.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to amend the motion to bundle to exclude item 5.05. Any further comments before we vote? Okay, roll call, Miss Howe.
Miss Antwine?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland? Aye. Mr. Leib? Nay. Miss Hummer? Nay. Miss Alvey? Nay. Miss Ellis? Aye. Mr. Grannon? Aye. Miss Schallheim?
Aye.
Miss Corkadell?
Nay.
Motion passes 5-4.
Okay. So we now have a motion to bundle, accepting with the amendment of an exception of 5.05. Do we have consensus on that? Okay. Seeing no opposition, so superintendent's recommendation has already been made. Do we have any, do you guys want to, do you guys have any comments?
Correct.
Okay, seeing no comments, okay, we are voting on items 5.01. Do we have any public comment on 5.01, 5.02, 5.03, 04, or 06? Seeing none, Ms. Howell, could you please call roll?
Miss Antwine?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland? Mr. Leib? Aye. Miss Hummer? Aye. Miss Alvey? Aye. Miss Ellis? Aye. Mr. Grannon? Aye. Miss Schallheim?
Aye.
Miss Corkadell?
Aye.
Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, item 5.05. Okay. The superintendent has recommended all. So we have Miss Antwine and then Miss Schallheim.
Thank you, President Corkadell. I'm a wee bit confused in terms of the date. Is this to indicate that this is the current contract and you all are looking to us to approve the current contract for the school year?
Mr. Cheknovich? Okay. Alex, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Good afternoon, for the record, Alex Cheknovich. Very good catch. I believe that's inaccurate. You'll see it's a FY 21 bid if you go to the attachment. So FY 21 would commence on the beginning of the 2020-21 school year.
Okay.
So
yes.
That's a simply an oversight on our part.
Thank you.
So.
Ms. Antwine, are you good?
I don't have any questions at this time. I'll do some follow-on.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Schallheim?
I have a couple different questions. We'll start with some of the hopefully easier ones. What is group limit? It says on the, with the chart, it has the vendor name, the group, the route group, and then the group limit. What is group limit?
Sure. So group limit basically is the contractors designating how many groupings or routes they're capable of servicing. So a small contractor that has small capitalization levels and possibly low employee counts and wishes to possibly stay small, possibly could designate to us that they would only accept the award of one grouping. So even if they were low bidder in 3 different areas, they've already told us they only have the capacity to accept one. We will calculate the most financially advantageous to the district and award them that one. A larger contractor that has, well capitalized, a large fleet, good access to credit lines, employee levels, et cetera, could take on more work and signal to us that that our business model is capable of handling up to 4 groupings possibly. So you'll see on page 2, for example, the second, B and G, they signal to us that they were only capable of taking on or absorbing 1 route. They may have actually been low bidder on 2 or 3, but they already told us, I can't take more work than that, and you'll see that they were only awarded 1. So they, as part of their bidding package, they put the prices down, et cetera, but on the bid form, there is a line that they also complete that says, what is the maximum amount of new work that they can take on? And remember, they're committing to essentially buying the bus and capitalizing that bus over a minimum of 7 to 12 years. So it's a pretty big long-term commitment for them.
Right. So help me understand why line G is only for 1 group limit at 3.9 million, but item I for 3 groups is 1.8 million.
So they're actually different number of buses if you look at the bid. So it's not everything. A group size could have a different number of buses.
So they vary in
assigned to it.
size.
Yes, they vary in size.
Okay.
So if you looked at if you looked at the actual solicitation document, you'll see the specifics. So Group A talks about how many buses, talks about the specifics of what comports with Group A, et cetera.
Okay.
So it's fleet size, and it's also run distance. So, for example, a service provider in South County has much greater distances that they have to cover. So that's typically the other factor is time of the run, distance of the run, and number of buses and the number of required capitalization elements that they have to acquire through their line of credits.
Got it. Thank you for that. I have some questions about the components of the contract, just for the public to understand. We get 2 pieces of paper, so I don't know any specifics, so I'm going to ask about specifics now. Do we make any changes to, this is for 7 years, so we've had lots of conversation about transportation up here very recently. Have we made any changes to the contract to mandate addition of GPS equipment or any sort of requirement for their employees after which we pay for their CDL to work any sort of length of time for us in return, or any sort of penalties for having middle or high school or elementary school students sitting on floors of buses or otherwise being driving with under potentially dangerous circumstances.
So there is a requirement in the specification for them to equip their buses with GPS-enabled devices. So
they were required.
They are, in this bus grouping, they are required to do that. So that's the first piece. And if you look at the full-blown solicitation, there is a schedule of liquidated damages. So there is a rather long list of, I'll call them infractions, in which financial penalties are levied against them if they are non-compliant. And so improperly staffing a route or double running a route, et cetera, those are some. Again, there's a very detailed schedule. We have to telegraph to the bidders what those financial assessments are, what those liquidated damages are, and that's contained in the bidding document, and they have to agree, essentially agreeing that is the schedule, that they will be assessed financially if they're not compliant with their contractual requirements.
Okay, that's wonderful. So just to make sure I heard correctly, we are now requiring that they have GPS devices for, is it because of our conversations about maybe the eventuality of having some sort of app to track buses? Is that the reason? Or
there's likely a number of benefits to,
okay, good. So
to
is that
having
one of them?
GPS-enabled buses.
Good. All right. Well, this is, I'm happier now. Also, one more question about routing. It's my understanding that, say, in Severna Park, that those buses also serve Old Mill in their routes. I think some of them go up to Old Mill and then come back down to Severna Park. With our transportation audit and our current team, transportation team, are we looking to really consolidate the geographical reach of each set of buses, so they're not going from SP to Old Mill to back to, are we looking to making those as efficient as possible?
Well, the answer to that is always yes, but depending on the layout or requirements of a school. So Old Mill is a larger school subset than Severna Park. So if there is spare capacity in the Severna Park and they're not assigned to Severna Park schools, I have a choice of either having them sit idle, waiting for their next Severna Park run, or they can go up to another district, service a school, and then come back down into Severna Park. So there are actually benefits to that on occasion.
Or we could correct the two late starting schools, elementary schools in Severna Park, and make those schools start at a more age appropriate time where kids like mine aren't getting off the bus in the dark in the winter.
Which would potentially require us acquiring more buses then to service that adjoining feeder district at a greater cost.
I'm sorry, wait, what?
So if those buses are not able to pick up students in another feeder district to maximize their efficiency, if they are realigned to another set of schools, somebody still has to pick up those schools in Old Mill. Who's going to do that, right? So it's going to require potentially more bus costs.
Okay.
So we try to have the buses run as many routes as possible, to maximize the efficiency of use. So if you can get the bus to run 4 routes in the morning instead of 3 routes in the morning, you're getting essentially more return on investment because that bus is used to service 4 schools instead of 3 schools. And so that's essentially the logic that we try to, again, use the buses so that they are running the maximum amount of time and servicing the maximum amount of schools.
I understand that there's perhaps a philosophical difference between how we, the school system, measure efficiency versus how other entities measure efficiency with regard to transportation. But that's maybe a topic for another time. My last question has to do, although, you know what, I'm going to ask my last question during an upcoming further conversation about budget and transportation. Thank you for your answers. Yes, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Schellheim, Ms. Ellis, and then Ms. Antwine.
Thank you. So you did answer one of the questions which I had, which was about GPS. So I'm, in my mind, going back over conversations, issues we've, I guess, been told about over the last year. One of them I seem to recall is AACPS spending money on training drivers that then are not contractually obligated to continue to serve as bus drivers. Yes. And those drivers are employed by these contractors?
So our training center trains drivers that wind up working for us on AACPS-owned operated buses.
Okay.
They're also a training center that then provides certificated drivers to our contracted fleet as well.
Right.
It's both.
So if we're going to offer that service to our contracted drivers, should we not be trying to go create a contractual obligation through these contracts with our bus contractors? You understand?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm concerned. I'm very concerned right now because we are a month out from getting the results of our transportation consultant, yet we're awarding 7-year contracts for without knowing all of those results. That's a big concern for me. Not suggesting in any way that that we should not be contracting with these particular providers. There's no judgment or quality statement in what I'm saying. It's just that it's hard to know what we're going to want to seek in our contracts until we finish this consultation process. So should the board not tonight vote on this 7-year contract with all of these providers, what would be our way forward?
Sure, I would personally highly recommend against that. These contractors are awaiting the award. They have to place orders for these buses with the bus manufacturers. There is a tremendous lead time on buses. It's not like we can walk into the local Ford dealership and drive off with a pre-manufactured F-150. The buses are custom made to meet the specifications of the state of Maryland, and then further customized to meet Anne Arundel County's requirements. To Ms. Schauheim's point, right? The buses don't come with GPS systems. They don't come with cameras. They don't come with a lot of these accoutrements as well. So these vendors, these are not pre-existing buses. These are going to be new buses that are going to have to be ordered, assembled, fabricated, delivered, inspected, tagged by the state of Maryland, and have to be ready to run come August. So my concern would be any delays could potentially jeopardize the route group. Remember, doesn't correspond with the buses. There's way more buses than if you add up the numbers on this page. So that would be my operational concern about creating delays.
I understand. That's why I asked the question.
Yes,
I'm still not sure the best way forward here, but do you know what the expected delivery date is on these buses?
So it will be after July 1, always, because here in the state of Maryland, there's a limit on the amount of years that a bus can be serviced and operated. 11 is the baseline, and you can get a one-year extension on that. So they always take delivery after July 1, but they have to be operational by they have to be inspected, tagged, operational, tested, and fully outfitted before about the 3rd week of August, so that they can do their dry runs and do everything else. So we back map, we know the manufacturers, we know the bus industry. We have to back map from there when we have to award the contractors, so that they can make sure that they work with their financiers, make sure that they work. And the buses themselves aren't all fabricated. So a point of information, the buses are not fabricated all in one place. They order a chassis from one company, the engine gets ordered from another company, a transmission gets ordered from another company. So pieces are fabricated by independent operators, and then they are just in time delivered to the final assembler. So when you see a bus riding down the road and it's got a nameplate of the equivalent of Ford, of a Chevy, of a Chrysler, or whatever, unlike those companies, buses are actually independently componentized and then assembled at that final location. So unfortunately, there's a lot of moving parts. So it's not the human side of the acquisition that's a concern. It's the capital side, and you need to essentially get into the queue, because there's a lot of school districts around the entire nation that are ordering buses. So we have to get in that queue to make sure that the chassis manufacturer, that the engine manufacturer, et cetera, all produce all those parts so they wind up at the assembler in time for them to put it all together and then deliver it and customize it to this jurisdiction.
I hear everything you're saying, and I feel like we're in a real bind. I'm very concerned about how to move forward, but should we get recommendations from the transportation consultant that require changes to our contracts in any way, we can't make those changes for 7 years. Is that correct?
Well, we rebid about a 1/7 of our fleet every year. So this isn't every bus in all of AACPS.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't rebid. We've got about, give or take, just say 600 buses. We don't this isn't for all 600 buses here in the school district. So this is to replace those buses that are coming off life expectancy, replacing those buses that have now exceeded their 11th or 12th year of life. They'll no longer be legal to operate here within the state of Maryland. So this is that cohort of buses. This isn't every bus in the whole school district. So
next year
there will be an equal size chunk next year, and the year after, and the year after that, et cetera.
And some of those will be with the same contractors? Is that, or how does that work?
Potentially, yes, absolutely.
Potentially, okay. Do we have a date, I'm sorry, I don't know, for when we're expecting the consultants?
I believe it was the first Friday in January, I believe.
First Friday in January, so now we're just talking about a couple weeks. And how will we be receiving that information from the consultant?
I anticipate electronically and maybe in paper format as well.
I'm really struggling with this. All right, those are my questions. I'm sorry, I was thinking through.
Okay, yeah. So we have Ms. Antoine and then Mr. Grannon.
Thank you. So that would be my follow-on question, was the period of performance. I certainly agree that continuity is very important, especially when you're customizing buses. But 7 years with recommendations coming back, I anticipate even more money if we need to modify those contracts based on what the consultant has to share. So could we consider modifying the period of performance down to maybe 2 years for now until we get the consultant? And that will allow the customization of the buses and ordering the buses, and it would also allow us to successfully integrate the recommendations without having to go through and modifying contracts over 7 years.
I think if, my opinion is if we do that, I think every one of these contractors will back out. 0 of them will sign on a dotted line, and we will not have any of these buses, 0 of them, come January. Come September. You're asking them to take out a loan and buy a bus that they expect to use for 7 to 11 or 7 to 12 years. But you're only going to guarantee them 2 years of work to recover the capitalization costs. See, so they're buying that bus and they're spreading the cost of that bus over X number of years.
But that's essentially what you're doing with your option years. With the option years, we don't have to
Right, so
agree to the
so
options.
they get 7 guaranteed, and then you've got 5 additional option years. You're saying, I'm only gonna guarantee 2, and that's it. And I suspect that most of the vendors are gonna say, thanks, but no thanks, and they're not gonna sign a loan.
So then they will be then willing to wait until we're able to get more information from our consultant so that we can really introduce any changes to this contract before it's awarded. Because the other downside of this is modifying those contracts may come with additional funding. And we want to avoid that as much as possible.
So what you're talking about is you'd essentially be rebidding this with a new set of specifications, which is going to take easily 8+ weeks plus another 4 weeks to get on your agenda and award it. So instead of these contractors being notified to go ahead and order the buses in December, you're going to be talking to them about not ordering the buses until the spring. The buses will not arrive. These buses will not be here, and the buses that they are scheduled to replace will no longer be legal to drive public school children in Anne Arundel County. So my question is, how are we going to get those youngsters to school come September if we don't have the apparatus to do that?
So it sounds to me, based on what you're sharing, there are 2 actions here. One is the ordering of the bus and having the actual tool to do the service, and then the concerns of the service itself. The consultant is here. I haven't heard complaints about necessarily the physical bus, but the services of the bus. And we were hoping, as we've discussed over since that was requested, that the information from that will allow us to come back with a contract that supports those recommendations. If we go into this now because of this, my concern is some of the services that are needed or recommended will be missed. So is it, when you bring up the buying of the buses, I get that, I agree with that. I just don't want us to be put into a position where we can't modify these contracts due to funding and based on those recommendations. I would rather us kind of even split it if possible and introduce a partial award for the purchase of the bus for however many years, with the understanding that we'll be modifying those contracts based on that recommendation for the services that they're providing.
I hear you. The bid wasn't structured that way. We would basically just have to start from scratch.
So you introduced a lot that I didn't know coming in today, honestly. But it is it's really hard for me knowing all of the concerns out there, and without this recommendation to support a contract for 7 years that will essentially be of the status quo.
Well, again, you could always negotiate a change order down the line. I mean, either direction. That is a possibility. You're not going to change order the physical asset, right? Once the chassis is assembled to the state of Maryland specifications, we're not going to change order extend that chassis out by 2 inches. But if it's an operational kind of change, if you want their drivers to have more hours of training or something like that, then that is something that you can negotiate through a change order after the fact. Really, this bid has historically always come, at this area, and it is completely predicated upon knowing which buses are going to, by state of Maryland law, have to come off the road, and which buses have to get replaced. And again, we back map that after extensive conversations with not just the final bus assemblers, but the component manufacturers. We know what pressure, again, the 3 big ones are the chassis, the transmission, and the engines. We talked to the chassis, transmission, engine manufacturers, and we talked to the assemblers, which is the nameplate that you see on the bumper, not what's underneath of that big yellow box. And again, we back map that with the industry and figure out when do we have to get into that assembly line to ever have a hope of having that bus delivered and through the entire state of Maryland certification process so we can transport a child by the first day of school. So there is, if it's operational type of changes or whatever, things like that, we can certainly work on some of those downrange through a change order, either add or deduct. Maybe we want them to do less of something. That's a credit change order, right? So that's a possibility. But the reason that I'm advocating the way I rarely do before this body is that my recommendation is to not jeopardize the arrival of the hard physical asset, which is that bus. I have no solution set for that. I can negotiate an operational change. I can, there's soft parts of the contract, and then there's hard, tangible parts. The hard, tangible parts is why you see a look of concern on my face right now. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Antwine, Mr. Grannon, Mr. Leib, Ms. Schallheim, then Ms. Alvey.
Thank you. I've got 2 questions. So one is I just want to restate to make sure I understand it. You're saying that some significant portion of our bus fleet, call it roughly a 1/7, is about to exceed the 12-year state limitation and therefore no longer be able to operate. And if we don't do something to replace those buses, we will simply have 1/7 less buses in our fleet, right?
Yes.
Basically, right? Yes. Okay. As I understand it, there's no concerns that any board members have about how transportation works or anything that's going to come from the transportation consultant that would have a recommendation that we have fewer buses. So I don't see how having more buses would be a bad thing for us. So then my second question is that where it says portal location on this attachment here, and it's got various clusters listed, what's our ability to reallocate amongst these portals going forward? Is that a contractual right that the vendors have to operate out of a certain portal?
So their pricing is structured on operating out of a certain portal. If we were to reassign the bus to a more distant portal, they could charge us a greater time and mileage differential. If we were to assign that bus to a nearer portal, then it works in our favor. We actually deduct from them time and mileage. So those are scalable elements. If they're required to do more work, we owe them. If that change requires them to do less work, less hours, less miles, we get a credit for that.
So if the consultant, just theoretically for sake of illustration, if the consultant were to come back with some recommendation that had, you know, a largely different allocation from the portals that you've got here, that's something that could be addressed contractually.
We can accommodate. There's a mechanism already contemplated within the documents to address exactly a scenario like you're outlining.
Okay, so I think with that information, as much as I think all my colleagues and the public knows how much I like to illustrate the board's independence by not voting on things when you all tell us to, I think that I'm going to support this because I don't want us to have fewer buses than we need. If anything, we need more buses, not fewer.
Thank you, Mr. Grannon. Mr. Leib?
Thank you, Madam President. I couldn't agree more with Mr. Grannon. This process has been going on for years and years and years. The whole state of Maryland, every school system in this state right now, about this time, is going through this same process. It just so happens that 1/7 of our fleet is going to meet its life expectancy. That's an ongoing thing, and that's a safety factor built in by the state of Maryland, which we follow. The construction of the chassis and the bus will not, I cannot imagine how the consultant's report would tell us to buy a bus that's equipped with a 5,700 horsepower engine rather than a 3,000 or whatever. The bus construction is not going to change to affect that. And in fact, as Mr. Grannon said, in order to achieve a later start time, it's 99% sure in my heart that's going to require us to purchase additional buses. So the concerns about the contract is for the construction and replacement of buses. It's not for the operation of the bus. And I support Mr. Grannon's position.
Thank you, Mr. Leib. Ms. Schalheim?
I have just a couple more questions. How many buses does this contract of $48,564,728.64 represent?
I don't have that with me, Ms.
Can I get that?
Oh,
though?
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I would love.
And it's in
to
a
have
bid
that.
document. I just didn't bring the whole.
Yeah.
The whole, voluminous
love
bid
to know.
document.
Thank you in advance for
It's
that.
a very simple question. I'm just ill-prepared to answer that at this juncture.
No worries. So one more question about contract openers. I disagree. I think that this is for buses and the operation of those buses, correct?
It is. It is. So essentially, they are given model routes, right? And so it's the capitalization of the bus, but it's also their labor and mileage factors, et cetera, for prescriptive routes. That's essentially a starting point, right? And then we do have contractually the capacity to alter any of those routes at any time, throughout the year even, not just from year to year, but we have to run the math. The math is all outlined within the specifications, and we either owe more or less depending on whatever that adjustment is. So they're not guaranteed. You know, there's labor rates, mileage rates, fuel rates. So fuel is indexed. We follow a national publicized index that's specific to our region. Every contractor, we tell them what the fuel factor is, but it's a nationally publicized index. They can look it up in the Wall Street Journal themselves. So each and every month, the fuel price even rises or falls. So that's all outlined in the contract, but there's a lot of flexibility in that contract.
Got it. And then with regard to contract openers, I still have a lot of heartburn about us using taxpayer money to fund the training of bus drivers to get their CDL and then to have them walk to trucking company X in the parking lot and go with them without having served us at all. Could this be a potential contract opener without having to rebid this? Can we say if we decided as a group that we want them to sign up for 6 months or a year or school year, whatever it is, can we can we mandate that at any point during the 7 years, or do we have to rebid the whole
So
thing?
somebody comes in, they're trained through an Anne Arundel County trainer at Cat North, and they put on their application that I'm going to go work for a contractor, whatever. They're not employed by this contractor yet, and say they never show up at this contractor. How can I penalize this contractor?
Got it. So it has nothing to do, that's my question. So it has nothing to do with this contract. That's a separate issue that we need to potentially address.
Right.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Quick. Okay. If we have no more comments, Ms. Howell, could you please call roll? Oh, my apologies. We do have one, a public comment from Ms. Joanne Tobin.
Good evening. Good evening, President Corkadell, Vice President Ellis, Dr. Arlotto, and members of the board. My name is Joanna Tobin. I'm Vice President of the PTSA at Annapolis High and a proud parent of a member of the 2020 class of Panthers. And I'm here to make a request specifically around this contract. I would like to ask that the board postpone approval of this 7-year service contract until you do receive the consultant's report. We need to have a better understanding of how the bus companies will be held accountable. I ask this because at Annapolis High School, we have continued to experience difficulties around bus schedules. The majority of our bus stops were moved up earlier, that is. My own child's from 6:55 in the morning to 6:40 with no explanation thus far. And buses are continuing to arrive at school early, often before students can go inside, again, with no explanation for why this is happening. And what that means is that students are losing more precious sleep. Families with resources find other ways to get their children to school. Students who do not have families with those resources don't have that option. And a half hour of sleep may not sound like a lot, but it is actually a big advantage that some students get it by being able to leave home in a car a half hour later. I applaud Dr. Arlotto's mention at the beginning when he presented the budget of an emphasis on opportunity. Opportunity begins when a child gets on the bus to go to school. Our teachers do amazing work. Our administrators do amazing work. We undermine them when the kids don't have reliable, transparent bus transportation. And we also see that when that happens, the opportunity gap widens at the bus stop. The students who don't get that extra half hour of sleep are already behind when they go to school. So I would urge the board, please, to think through what it means to sign a 7-year service contract. I understand there's a difference in building buses. Before getting the consultant's report and before thinking through what it means to hold some of these services accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tobin. We have two follow-up comments from board, Ms. Antwine and then Ms. Ellis.
Thank you again. So then I have follow-up questions based on what she just shared. Oh, no worries. So that therein lies a lot of my concern. As you know, I'm in District 1, and the late start times and the arrival times of the schools, I'm witnessing that firsthand. So I do understand. The bus companies, I'm just asking because I just don't know. If this is a state mandate and they are a bus company, then they are already preparing to buy a new fleet in order to be competitive in their field, right?
No, they're buying new equipment to replace old equipment that is no longer legal to operate in the transportation of public school students within the state of Maryland, within our jurisdiction.
So I guess my question is, if we never do this contract, they will still be ordering buses because that is their line of business. So they will still be investing in the buses in order to be compliant with the state mandates. Yes, is that not the case?
Well, there's two answers to that. So
Okay.
the answer is potentially. The concern isn't would they order the buses or not. They may. The question is, if they do they order them in time so they actually get here before the start of school? Because the bus that it's replacing will not have a license plate on it anymore. I cannot put a single public school student on that bus any longer. That bus is going to get sold. It's going to get sold out of state. It's going to get sold to somebody.
Right.
So when the license plate gets taken off of that old bus on June 30th, and I don't have any kind of new bus come September 1 at all, what's our plan B? Because I don't have
Gotcha.
one.
Understood. I just feel like we're looking at two separate contracts. And it's merged into one.
It has to be, so.
I get,
I'm not
understood.
buying, so if I bought the buses, now I own the buses, and I'm just hiring you to drive them.
Right.
That's one model. I don't have, if you take a look at my capital budget, I'm not asking for $40-something million to buy buses to hand over to a private contractor to just drive. Our business model has been here at least during my 2 decades, and I am completely sure that it probably predates me by another 40 or 50 plus years, is the contracted operator is taking out a loan for that bus. They are privately financing that bus. They're spreading the cost of that bus, amortizing it over a period of years. They are also paying for the bus driver. They're paying for the maintenance of that bus. They're paying for the fuel that goes into that bus. They are billing us for that. We're reimbursing them for that. And of course, they're a private business, so they make a profit. This is,
Understood.
capitalism. So that's basically the business model. So there's no real way to disaggregate the two of them.
That's what I needed to
Unless,
understand.
yeah, there's no way to disaggregate the two of them unless the county government was willing to give us, the school district, through our capital budget, many millions of dollars to buy the buses. And then the second decision point would be, once the county government gave us many millions of dollars to buy the buses, would the county want to give us many millions of dollars to hire our own drivers and mechanics and aides and everything? Or would they give us the operating dollars to outsource the operation of that bus? But that is absolutely not the business model at all that exists today. That's not the business model that exists in any single school district here within the state of Maryland.
Yes, sir. So then my next question would be, and this is contractually, the contract hasn't been awarded yet. Could we then award part of the contract, do an upfront award of the part of the contract, and award it incrementally, basically, where we're awarding them the money that they need to purchase those buses, but then pending the rest of the funds that they would need for the operation, pending our consulting?
So the answer is no, we don't have the money for this. So we're not giving them upfront the money to buy the whole bus. They're getting a loan to buy the whole bus. We're paying that bus, we're helping refund their loan payment, 1/12 of it every year, spread across a 7-year time horizon. So to do what you suggest, I would have to have the entire 7 years worth of lump sum capitalization costs upfront day one, and I simply don't have that. That capitalization cost is spread over 7 times 12 months.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Schallheim. I'm sorry, Ms. Antwine. My apologies. It's getting a little later. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. I want to thank Ms. Tobin for her testimony. I am 6th year as a parent of Panthers, and I share all of your concerns and all of your pain. And I know we have students at that school who are not able to manage those challenges the way some of us are. So I do share your concerns. I agree fully with what Mr. Grannon said, most of what Mr. Leib said, though I do believe, Mr. Leib, you implied that this contract is only for the equipment, but I mean, the operation does come along with this contract, right?
Right.
And so I feel the need. You thoroughly answered my questions. So I feel the need to go ahead and vote for the contract, but I am putting a whole lot of hope and faith into what you indicated, Mr. Cheknovich, which is that we do have the ability to negotiate some of the operational pieces of the contract.
Sure, so I'll give you a perfect example. Is some of the questions or concerns I've heard is about, well, what's the time that a bus picks up at a specific stop? Nowhere in this whole contract, nowhere does it say what time that route starts or what time that route ends, because the price of that bus isn't dependent on if its first stop is at 6:50 or 6:55, right? I mean, it's mileage, which isn't going to change whether you start 5 minutes later or 5 minutes earlier. The cost of the bus isn't going to change whether a stop's pickup time is 5 minutes later. So the time, I mean, if the concern that I've heard tonight, one of the main concerns is, well, what's the time of that first pickup, or what time does that bus arrive at the school, or whatever? Not a single word in this entire document dictates those pieces. I mean, those are the elements that we provide, right? We establish the stops, we establish the times, we establish the start times of schools, the principal controls what time the door of that building opens. So none of that, so many of the concerns that have been outlined tonight are not even a factor in the pricing structure or in this award.
So I know in practice, a lot of our buses do not follow specifically the routes or the timing of their routes. We are holding our contractors accountable for following. In other words, if AACPS determines that this bus picks up at 6:55, it doesn't show up at 6:40.
Well, that's called creep. So that means that we have the people out there to catch them doing that.
And they're obligated to.
Yes.
Correct that.
They are.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, seeing no more questions from the board, we've already received public testimony. Ms. Howell, please call roll.
Ms. Antwine?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland?
Aye.
Mr. Leib?
Aye.
Ms. Hummer? Aye. Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Grannon?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell? Aye. Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Okay, next, it does not look like we have any administrative personnel appointments today on item 6.01, correct, Dr. Alato? And so we are now on action item 6.02, the 2020 legislative program. Dr. Alato, your recommendation to repeat from last session, please?
Yes, ma'am. I once again recommend approval of the 2020 legislative program.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Mr. Grannon for recommending that we pause and really have a chance to research and look into everything that we have in the legislative position before we vote on it. So I appreciate that. I, in particular, had some concerns with the Maryland Blueprint for Education and wanted to make sure I understood the concerns I had and how they're being addressed as far as education goes. So I went through the recommendations, and I just want to bring up a few points. As far as the Commission's recommendations to address the achievement gap, I like the focus on resources like social services to address those gaps. We've seen that changes in curriculum alone and in the classroom teaching practice has not improved the achievement gap. In fact, changes over the last couple of decades in education have negatively impacted the learning environment, overstressing our kids, driving teachers out of the profession, and causing a continued decline in students entering the teaching profession. This has been a nationwide problem, but one in which Maryland and Anne Arundel County bear local responsibility. I do love the emphasis on strong families and again the need for social supports as a focus for eliminating the achievement gap. I fully agree that we must continue to address biases that determine which kids are tracked into advanced coursework. My number one concern is where's the recommendation to undo the standards that have been a detriment to deep learning and the natural curiosity that enables students to succeed through exploration and trial and error. I do fully support increasing the opportunity for access to pre-K for all families that need the support. However, I do worry greatly about standardizing academics for 3- and 4-year-olds and will never support legislation mandating pre-K. Again, I want to provide the opportunity, but not standardize our 3- and 4-year-olds. Are you okay?
Sorry, I'm short, so I need a taller chair.
A big one for me, the Commission talks about rebranding the teaching profession as a more attractive career. This is indeed a great idea, but I do hope retired teachers and those who left the profession were consulted. A living salary is very important, but pay is not the driving factor that has led to a steep decline in job satisfaction. We are to treat teachers as the professionals they are, and curriculum development therefore should happen at the school levels, and teachers should be given the flexibility and autonomy to meet their students where they are in the classroom. There should be a sharp reduction in demands placed on teachers and students by the central office, and cost savings should be found in this area. The only way to improve teaching and learning experience is to put education into the hands of our teachers. Yes, teachers should be treated and paid as the highly educated professionals they are, with the expectation that they will teach our students effectively. Anyone who questions my meaning here needs to talk to teachers, and we just heard from 2 of them who stated it beautifully about their workload. So again, I encourage anyone who has questions about this to talk to teachers, especially former teachers, the way I have and I continue to do. The Commission has done a fabulous job in identifying needs in college and career readiness pathways. Years from now, schools should have a completely different model than the century-old model we continue to follow. This and my earlier recommendation that we eliminate the harmful practices imposed by standardization will certainly bring significant improvements in mental health as students feel more connected both in the classroom and to the world in which they live. I am a huge supporter of accountability and the recommendation that money follows the student into the school. However, accountability has led to practices that counteract effective teaching and interfere with learning through standardization and testing. Therefore, I am wary of the accountability recommendations and worry about the measurements that will be used and how they will be used. I do hope this will not be implemented in the way accountability has been in the recent past. Finally, I understand the concerns of many citizens regarding the price tag of these recommendations. I believe it is counterproductive and unfair to say that those who are skeptical of the spending are anti-public education. I myself am skeptical of a huge price tag to transform education. We should be replacing current practices with new practices and finding cost efficiencies that way. Personally, as a taxpayer, I am not against spending on public education. I devote countless hours each week to our students. No one more than me wants Anne Arundel County to be the best place for a student to go to school, no matter their zip code, color of their skin, or other characteristics or circumstances they may live in. Many are understandably skeptical after justifiable dissatisfaction with the results of the last funding formula. I believe for most, it's concern for effective use of taxpayer dollars, not refusal to support public education. Based on these statements, it is difficult for me to make a blanket vote in support of Maryland's blueprint for education, but considering there is no specific legislation to vote on at this time, I will support the recommendations in general. This is not an indication of my support for any specific legislation, and that will be determined as it is brought forth.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Ms. Schalheim?
I just want to thank you again for your work on this, and also state for everyone to hear again that we need to fully fund education. This is a once in a generation opportunity to do that. Do I have concerns about specific things in the blueprint? Sure, yes, but I'm not going to not vote for this based on that. I think we need to get the money, we need to apply it, we need to pay our teachers properly, we need to do all the 5 pillars that it outlined, and I definitely believe that we should vote for this now. Our colleagues had 2 weeks to get concerns to staff, and it's my understanding that they received none, and we should just vote on this and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schalheim. Any other comments from other members? I'm getting to, And I do believe we have a couple people already signed up for public comment. So I have Aaron Lorenz, Mary Didone, and Drake Smith. Nope, you good? Okay. Okay, looks like she has declined. Is she coming up? Okay. I know. We'll give all 3 a chance to come on up. Spend some time. And Ms. Oakes. Yes, Ms. Oakes, you're welcome to join us too. Thank you very much. Ma'am, Erin?
Yes, hi. My name is Erin Lorenz, and I'm in my 7th year in Anne Arundel County, serving at Annapolis High School. Overall, I have 13 years of teaching experience. As you consider how to support the Kerwin Blueprint for Education, I would invite you to consider this legislation as a way of building communities. And one way is how it builds up the professional teaching community. I am in the unusual situation of having transferred from Montgomery County and having steps docked when I came in. It was 2013, and at that time, AACPS teachers still had not had their frozen steps restored from the recession, and it would be unfair for me to be paid more for the same level of experience, and I accepted that. However, the idea that I agreed to have my salary fixed 3 steps below my experience level in perpetuity is absolutely and unequivocally false. I believed that the county would eventually adjust us all back once the economic situation improved. At no point have I considered it acceptable to permanently keep my salary below that of my colleagues because I happened to transfer counties during an economically difficult climate. This is my own experience, but plenty of my colleagues have been left far worse off. Fulfilling our contracts and including makeup steps ensures that our teaching community is strong. We can build each other and our students up instead of wondering how to juggle second and third jobs. We can stay in the schools we love instead of applying to neighboring counties. We can build strong teams in schools of teachers who know each other, the content, the kids, and the communities instead of the constant turnover. And we can actually honor those relationships with students that we know matter so much. Advocating for Kerwin also gives us a chance to build up the communities we serve by expanding opportunities for career and technical education, as well as increasing access to dual enrollment. This could quite literally change lives. Since I teach primarily 12th graders, I can attest that so many of the students we serve simply do not see plausible education or career options for themselves after high school. And as an article in today's Capital Gazette pointed out, there is a skilled labor shortage across the state, and here is the perfect chance for us to help. Supporting this funding would open worlds for thousands of students across this county. We know the research on hope and the impact it has on kids, and let's live up to our own goals. And finally, let's not forget that in order for all of this community building to take place, students actually have to be at school at a reasonable time, on time, and safely. While Kerwin doesn't directly address the issues of student transportation, reforming our system has to be a priority. It's an issue of equity with academic as well as with extracurricular and social consequences. As director of the school's drama company, I'm so proud of the community that we've built. I deeply wish we could truly open that community to any student wanting to join us instead of having something like a ride get in the way. I have students who can't come and make up a test after school because they don't have a ride, who can't participate in any number of clubs, music ensembles, or any of the other offerings at Annapolis High School simply because they have one way home and it's the bus that leaves at 2:18. Thank you for all your work on behalf of all of us, and please feel free to reach out to me with any questions you may have. I'm right next door, as we at A High are very fond of saying.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Dunn.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Dr. Mary Dodoni, Secretary of the Anne Arundel County Branch of the NAACP. I speak tonight on behalf of both the Anne Arundel County Branch of the NAACP, the adult group, and the Anne Arundel County NAACP Youth and College Division. I'm here at the direction of and with the full support of President Jacqueline Boone Alsup of the adult group and President Drake Smith of the Youth and College Division. They both send their regrets that they can't be with you tonight. I think President Smith has homework. Thank you. Both the adult chapter and the Youth and College Division of the Anne Arundel County NAACP fully support the wording and recommendations listed under the heading of Funding of Excellence in Public Education in the board's draft 2020 legislative program, and we oppose any changes that would weaken these recommendations in any way. The vision of the NAACP is, I quote, to ensure a society in which all individuals have equal rights without discrimination based on race. The mission of the NAACP includes, again I quote, ensuring the educational, social, and economic equality of all citizens. These statements accord with the Board of Education's own goal of elevating all students and eliminating all gaps, which in turn accords with the current Commission's tasking to research and develop major funding and policy reforms to improve the quality of Maryland's public education system, to benefit all of more than 790,000 students, more now, which will in turn benefit the state's economy and quality of life for all Marylanders. As the most recent Park scores show, Maryland and Anne Arundel County are largely failing at our best efforts to prepare students for college and career. This isn't because the students are incapable or the teachers are bad. This is because the system no longer works. The current Commission analyses and recommendations were formed by a cross-sectional commission of experts using real-world data with enough time to study the problem. Whether we look at these recommendations from an economic perspective or a social perspective, the current recommendations tell us the way forward. The recommendations form an integrated and phased system of changes that work together for the greatest positive impact. They're not a menu from which to select based on personal or political preference. They're an integrated system of changes working together to accomplish the greatest impact for Maryland's students, families, and economy. The Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP and our Youth and College Division stand in firm support of the legislative program with respect to the current recommendations as written and strongly oppose any changes that would disassemble, weaken, or delay any of these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Good evening. India Oaks, Hillsmere Parent and PTA Advocacy Chair. I just had 2 quick comments on the legislative program. First is just a technical point, but I asked that, on page 2, you moved the student board member to be listed immediately after the other board members. It may just be an appearance issue, but given that over 40 years later our student member remains to be the only one in the nation with full voting rights, I think the current spacing between the student member and rest of the board is a disservice of representing who the board is. Turning to my second comment, I just wanted to re-emphasize what many in this room believe in, and that is providing full support towards all of the recommendations within and funding for the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. Everything within the recommendations are things we all have been fighting for years, with providing pre-K opportunities to all in need, more funding for teachers, including a base starting pay that is equal to their fellow professionals, more funding for our critical needs in mental health and special education, and so on. But just as important is understanding the population we are serving. As others have said, Maryland is one of the richest places in the country, including having the highest median household income in the nation. Yet our students in public schools that are living in poverty jumped from 22% in 2002 to 44% now. These opportunities to overhaul Maryland's education system and funding formulas only happen every 20 years, and unfortunately the recommendations from 17 years ago failed to deliver the intended high-quality education to all our students. We cannot fail our students again, especially those most vulnerable, and we also cannot just rely on others to advocate on behalf of us. And so I encourage you as a board to make the Blueprint for Maryland's Future a priority during the 2020 legislative session, so that all our voices are heard to get this done, and get it done now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, India. Greatly appreciated. And on that effort, I had a question for Ms. Ortiz, that the edit on the spacing of page 2 that Ms. Oaks had indicated, that would be considered technical. We wouldn't have to do any amending, would we, for that to occur?
Yeah, for the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. So yeah, it's a technical edit. I'll definitely take a look at that. I'm not sure. So you received like the pretty version of the the track changes. Sorry, it's late. Track change document. But then when we get the actual program, I can't recall off the top of my head how it's formatted. But if the board wishes, we can certainly just do it all in alphabetical order, as we do with the other board members.
Okay. On that. Thank you so much, Ms. Oaks, for the recommendation and your testimony. Okay, we have a board follow-up question to the testimony. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. Ms. Antoine?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank each of you for what you shared tonight in your testimony. And Ms. Ortiz, I thank you as well for helping this to make sense to us and consolidating in the work there. Ms. Oaks, I understand too that you have stepped up to serve and are running for the board. I appreciate your choice to serve. Thank you very much. Our students need committed service people like yourself.
Okay, seeing no more comments or questions from public or members, we have a pending motion. Ms. Howell, please call the roll.
Ms. Antwine?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland?
Aye.
Mr. Leib?
Aye.
Ms. Hummer? Aye. Ms. Ellis? Aye. Mr. Grannon? Aye. Ms. Schalheim?
Definitely aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Ms. Howe. Okay, item 6.03, Eastport Elementary School third-party project and the playground replacement. Dr. Arlotto, could we have your recommendation, please?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend board approval of the Eastport Elementary School third-party project playground replacement.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Okay. Any questions from our members? I'm just going to comment and say that I'm always, our playground replacement can never happen soon enough for me. I recognize that in addition to recess time, the actual ability to recess while in that time is important. So thank you guys very much. Seeing that there are no questions from any members, do we have any public testimony on this matter ad hoc? Seeing none, Ms. Howell, please call roll.
Miss Antwine?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland?
Aye.
Mr. Leib? Miss Hummer? Miss Ellis? Mr. Grannon?
Aye.
Miss Schalheim?
Aye.
Miss Corkadell?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you, Ms. Howell.
Would you, since you have waited so patiently, would you introduce yourself, please, so the board knows who you are?
Hi, my name is Neely Garrity. I'm with the Eastport Elementary School PTA, and I'm chairing the Play Eastport committee that we created about a year ago to fundraise for the playground. Yep.
Thank you so very much.
And my team's back there too, sitting with me.
Oh my goodness.
Did you raise $120,000 in 1 year?
Yes, we did.
That is one of the biggest challenges of PTOs, rock star status, most certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Okay, item 6.04, fiscal year 2020, second quarter operating budget supplemental and fund transfer. Dr. Arlotto, do we have your recommendation, please?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend board approval of the second quarter operating budget supplemental and fund transfer for FY 2020 to be submitted to the county council.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and it looks like we do have a couple comments on this item. We have Ms. Schalheim followed by Ms. Hummer.
Thank you for presenting this to us. I do have a couple questions. Firstly, it looks like we are, if I'm reading this right, quite amazing at getting grants for all sorts of wonderful things. And so to the tune of, looks like, I don't know, I think it's $3.2 million. Kudos to staff for that. That's incredible. And I just want to know, and we don't have to do it tonight because I know it's super late, but I would love to hear about some of these wonderful items like the Mead Cyber Lab and the trauma sensitive schools, et cetera. Perhaps at another board meeting, just a quick overview of these wonderful things. I think that we need to give ourselves more credit, for the wonderful things that we do and for our ability to raise this kind of money through our grant outreach. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schalheim. Ms. Hummer.
And actually, I was going to make the same comment that I am thrilled to see that Meade High School has $681,000 in local grants for the amazing things that are going there. And I know that comes from our business partners and from local impact fees from the casino. And so, but that's, all the grants are exciting, but very exciting for the Meade cluster to see that.
Okay, seeing no more comments, public testimony. Seeing none, Ms. Howell, please call roll.
Miss Antwine?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland? Aye. Mr. Leib? Aye. Miss Hummer? Aye. Miss Ellis? Aye. Mr. Grannon?
Aye.
Miss Schalheim? Aye. Miss Corkadell?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. This meeting is in conclusion, and just a general reminder that our next general board meeting will be held on Wednesday, January the 8th, 2020 at 10 a.m. Budget hearings for public testimony will be on Tuesday, January the 7th at 6:30 p.m. at Old Mill High School with sign-ups beginning at 5:30 p.m. Thursday, January the 9th, we will be back here in our board meeting, in our boardroom with sign-ups also beginning at 5:30 for a 6:30 start time. The budget workshop for members, participation will be on Tuesday, January the 14th, here in the boardroom at 6 p.m. Okay, before we conclude, I want to thank everyone for coming, and this meeting is formally adjourned.